Our lecturers today are a songwriting and producing team from Minneapolis, Minnesota that you may have heard of. They happen to be two of the best who've ever done it. So please welcome Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
We have a lot of music to talk about, a lot of things to talk about, but I would love to just have us listen to something first so we can all sort of reset, cleanse our ears from whatever else we've been doing. I want to play something actually from an album that you produced with Janet Jackson last year. This is a cut entitled Broken Hearts Heal. Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Janet Jackson. Not bad, huh? It's okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
All right.
There are more popular songs off of this album. It was a very popular album, very successful album. But there's a story behind every song, and I was curious to know what the story behind this song was, if there's one you want to share with us.
Yeah, well, Broken Hearts Heal was, remember, Janet hadn't made a record in 7 years, and we hadn't worked with her for probably 9 years. And I always like to say we really hadn't worked with her for about 15 years, and by that I mean we hadn't had a chance to make a record with her that was just us, without, I hate to use the word record company interference, but at a certain point in time, after we had made a bunch of successful albums, for some reason, there was a certain point people felt like they had to all get involved, and I don't really know why. I think they all had good intentions, but I don't think the results were the greatest. So this was a chance on this album to go back to just the three of us making music in a vacuum without the record company didn't even know we were making the record. That was the greatest thing about it. This particular song, Broken Hearts Heal, was Janet really had never addressed anything about her brother Michael dying. And if you know Janet and you're a fan of hers, you know that she doesn't speak a lot, but anything you want to know about her and how she's feeling always are in the records. If you listen to her records, she tells you exactly how she's feeling. So this was her opportunity to talk about his memory, but to do it in a kind of a celebratory way. And the way the song lays out for us was, it was just a matter of starting off very simple about her reminiscing about them together as kids and the things that happened and the way that she remembered. Because we remember Michael as like superstar Michael. For her, that's her brother. She grew up with him. So we tried to start the song like that. As the song goes on and builds, it becomes celebratory in a way that we should celebrate life and we should celebrate the legacy that he left musically and all of that. And at the end of the song, it's almost, for us, it's almost like they're together singing, where it's kind of, she purposely sang the song kind of in his style. But at the end of the song, it's kind of like he's almost rising, like he's leaving. So that was kind of sonically what we were trying to do. And actually, there was a thing that happened in the song where she was singing it, and Michael always had a habit of being not great in the studio as far as like discipline. So, in the studio, you guys are probably learning all this stuff. You're supposed to just kind of stay the same amount from the mic and not wear jingly stuff and not stomp around and all that. And Michael, when he gets in the studio, all of that goes out the window. He's dancing and, making all kind of rackets, snapping his fingers, clapping his hands and all that stuff. But that becomes part of the magic of the track. Now, Janet is very disciplined in the studio. She has great studio habits. But on this particular song, every time the second verse would come, she would start snapping her fingers. And then she'd stop and she'd go, "Oh, sorry, I don't mean to do that." And finally we said, Janet, you know why you're doing that? Because your brother used to do that. And this is really about him. And it just felt right. So the snaps that you hear in there are her actual snaps that we just left rather than, filter them out or something. And it's just a very personal song. I guess that would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, and a beautiful song. How do you know when you have a good match between a melody and an emotion? for the song you want to write?
I guess the easiest way to find that blend is feel good. And when we usually design music for an artist, you know, like Janet, we've been working with Janet for many, many years, and we know her personally, and we know her family personally. It's kind of you get into it as a person that knows them that way. So we kind of tailor every individual song to that particular artist. In this case, knowing Janet, we know what works for Janet. We knew what kind of worked for the song. Actually, this song was written, I think, a short time after Michael passed. And we held on to it and held on to it. And finally, it came to pass that we got to produce it on Janet. So you just kind of know, you know, it's that feeling. Yes, feeling. It's the innate quality. Don't question yourself about that. You know what feels good, and that's what works. What comes from the heart reaches the heart.
You guys obviously go back, you guys as a team and Janet, and you have that 30 years or whatever it is of trust built up. Some of the folks in this room haven't had 30 years to be around one another. They've had about 2 weeks.
Been around 30 years.
Yeah.
Most of the people in this room.
That perhaps as well. But how would you suggest, in terms of collaboration, starting to build that trust in a maybe a little bit more abbreviated amount of time?
Well, first of all, we're huge fans of collaborations. Obviously, we've collaborated for a long time. But I think just looking at the way we met and the whole thing, first of all, we met in school. So we met educating, or learning to educate, actually. We were in a program called Upward Bound, and it was about peer teaching, which was about teaching kids how to actually do math, which I was horrible in math, but I thought if I could get in a program to teach math, maybe I'd learn it better. Not very successful, but it did put me together with this brother, which is a great thing, and we came together over music and listening to music. And so for us, you know, our first collaboration was we put a band together, or Terry put a band together, and I played in the band, and that was our first collaboration. But then when we wrote, we had a lot of trouble because I came up listening to like pop music and Seals and Crofts and America and Chicago and stuff like that. He grew up listening to P-Funk, Earth, Wind and Fire, that kind of stuff. And when we tried to write together, it never worked. But we trusted the process, and over time, as we got to know each other better, we figured out finally how to make that work, how to make his funky bottom and my pretty top, or whatever you want to call it, to work together. So I'd say in any collaboration, yeah, trust is really important. But I think that you naturally will figure out the right people to work with, you know, the right combinations of things. I think it's important too, we have a saying where we just say we have no slack, meaning that we both know what we're good at, but we both know what we're not good at. So the things that Terry's good at, I let Terry do them. I'm not trying to do them. And at the end of the day, the best idea wins. So it's not whether it's his idea or my idea, it's about the best idea. And as long as you're trying to get to the best idea, it doesn't really matter who comes up with it. So you really, first you got to put your ego aside, I would say. And then you do have to trust, whether it's for a day or a week or whatever. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and just the idea of right and wrong, you just got to throw that out the window. Best always wins.
So what you mentioned, Upward Bound. This is summer of 1972. What was your first impression of one another? Jimmy, what was your first impression of Terry and vice versa?
Well, my first impression of Terry would be the equivalent of love at first sight. Really. The cool thing was we're staying in dorms, and I'm like 13 years old. He's like 15, right? And so we're like young, right? Junior high kids. And it was so cool. So we're walking through the dorms, and everybody's dorm rooms are open like the first day. And I walk past this dorm room, doors open. I'm hearing Kool and the Gang playing loud. And I walk in, I see a brother with a red, black, and green bass playing along to Kool and the Gang, playing all the parts. And I'm looking at this dude, it's Terry. And I'm like going, look at this motherfucker, man. I never seen nothing like that in my life. And I was basically, I have family, but I have half brothers and sisters all older than me. So I was basically grew up an only child. And it was like seeing him was like, I gotta get to know this dude. Like he was like gonna be my older brother or my best friend or something. Like I just knew when I met him. And the music was so good. He looked so cool. And you know, when you're 13, somebody 15 is like, that's a big deal. You know, it's like, you know. So that was my impression when I first saw him. It's like I gotta get to know him.
Yes, in my first impression, I walked through the lunchroom one day. It was before dinner, but after lunch. And in the lunchroom, we had a piano, a little upright piano. And I walked through and I see Jimmy Jam with a crowd of girls standing around him, serenading the girls. And I said, man, this dude's kind of cool. And at that time, I didn't know that he was a drummer. So at the end of the project for the summer, we had a dance. And so I asked the counselor, I said, can we put together a band and kind of play some songs? And he said, yes. So I already had a little band together. David Island, who was a saxophonist, and Jelly Bean Johnson, who was a drummer. He was the drummer in the time. So I went and asked Jimmy, I said, hey, man, I got this little band together. I want to put together something to play for this little thing coming up. Would you like to be in the band? He said, well, you want me to drum? I said, no, I want you to play keyboards. He said, I don't play keyboards, I play drums. I said, well, your dad plays keyboards. You can play keyboards, I heard you playing. So he consented to play. We went and stole his dad's keyboard. And we got together and terribly played the little gig, and we've been playing together ever since, off and on.
Nice. So you mentioned actually your father, who was a musician, Jimmy. When did you have the bug then early as far as becoming a musician and having musical aspirations?
Yeah, I mean, I was that kid you hear about that's always beating on stuff around the house, and that was me. And then my parents got me a drum set when I think I was 3. They got me like a drum set, and I used to, you know, bang around. Then they got me like a more professional set when I was about 8, and I used to just blast records and play along with them all the time. That was my thing. My dad had a band that was basically just a trio. Just it was always a guitar player. My dad played keyboard, and a drummer. And the thing was, he never could keep a drummer. Like every week there'd be a different drummer, and he'd have to learn the set and the whole deal. So one time, I was probably 12 at this point in time, and we used to go watch him play on the weekends, me and my mom. And somebody from the audience, or not even from the audience, but somebody, actually the guitar player in the group, said, why don't you let him play a song with you, right? And I was like, yeah, I can do it. And my dad was like, nah, he's too young, whatever. He says, he knows your whole set. He says, he's here every week. So I came in, I sat in and played a song. Crowd loved it. Next week, drummer didn't show up. I played the whole set. And then the guitar player said, why don't you just put him in the band? And because you're just playing weekends anyway. So it was like, okay, cool. So, and then he tried to give me like $5 or something. And then my wife, my mom stepped in and said, no, man, you got to pay him like you paid like a regular musician. She was like my agent at that point in time. So then that's how that happened. And then that's how I started playing drums. So I literally every weekend would play the drums for my dad. And I was only like 12, 13 years old. And it was fun because I was, in a club and all that. And it was a great experience. Loved it.
And Terry, was music your first love or something else?
Well, music was probably not even in the cards for me. I mean, I grew up in a family that loved music, but no one was musical. I had a stepfather who he played guitar very badly, I might add. But he would always break the top 2 strings, and that would leave the other strings there. So I used to pick up his guitar, and that's why I am a bass player to this day. And, I was an athlete and a good student. I wanted to be a doctor, actually. So I really always loved medicine. And my senior year in high school, I got injured playing football. And I had a lot of time on my hands. And I started picking up music more and more. And music bit me, and can't get rid of this bite now. Actually, I love music. So that process kind of took me into all the other things that I did, because as an athlete, I was always a leader or a person that would grab people and put them into something in the right position or whatever. And actually, I use that skill in having a band. You know, putting people in a position to succeed is almost like coaching, and kind of where we are now.
Now, you mentioned that you guys joined a band together. However, you also had separate bands. I'd like to sort of maybe give that people in here an idea of what that sounded like. This is Jimmy Jam, then known as James Harris, with the band Mind and Matter.
Oh, no.
1977. And the song is entitled I'm Under Your Spell, written by James Harris.
Yeah, we get the idea. Let's just say I was very influenced by Philadelphia, and everything I tried to do was either Gamble and Huff or Tom Bell or, you know, the Spinners or the Stylistics or Blue Magic or whatever. That was my group. That was what I loved.
Now, you're a
Back in that day.
teenager. So when did you write this song? How old are you?
Probably 16. Okay. Yeah, 16, 17.
I mean, I know you've done a lot of things in your career. That's really impressive at 16 to be able to write that, just that alone.
Well,
you know?
it's funny because as I'm listening to the record, it's reminding me of, first of all, the guys singing were amazing guys. And I met them because I had a high school counselor that he had a piano in his office. Just by mistake, he ended up getting a piano room. So he had a piano in his office. And I walked in one day and I said, oh, you got a piano in here? He said, oh, you play? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I sing. I said, okay, cool. And that's how I met him. And he introduced me to all the singers in the group. But I was a 16-year-old kid, and all these guys were like in their 20s. And I was writing all the songs and producing everything and doing it. And it was crazy because in my world, I didn't have any responsibilities. Like, you know, I didn't have a job. I didn't have nothing. It was just like, I just want to do music all day. And I never could understand, like, how can you guys be late to practice? How can you guys, you know, whatever. I had to be this annoying ass kid, you know. But that was when we made the record, and I'm like remembering the drummer always sped up, like he never could keep a beat. I'm hearing the bells in there is like real glockenspiel. Like I went and got from the band room, like I stole from the band room like a glockenspiel, and I'm like, oh, bing, 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 if anybody knows what a glockenspiel is. Anyway, but that was my attempt at my best Gamble and Huff attempt.
You did good.
You did good. It's funny because you were doing some of the choreography moves. We showed just a little piece of this. If we could just go to the first video, number 1, and we'll just show a bit of it, not the whole thing. This is Mind and Matter performing live.
They didn't tell me it was going to be a roast, man. Come on, man.
All right, so who was the guy with the guitar and the...
Yeah. Wow, this shit's off to a rocky start is all I can say. This is not what I signed up for. This is like, this is your life or something.
Right.
You know, somebody's gonna come parading out from the balcony or something now. Yeah, so I had this keyboard. It was my very first keyboard. It was a Roland SH-1000. And I had seen somebody on a show, probably on American Bandstand, because that was like the show. Somebody had like a keyboard around their neck. So I was like, I got to get one of those. And then, of course, they were like way too much when I couldn't afford it. So I took my little keyboard that I already had, my little Roland, and I put like guitar screw pegs on the side of it and a guitar strap. And I used to wear it around my neck. That was like my thing. So I kind of made my own guitar. And I still have that synthesizer, as a matter of fact. They just Roland refurbished it for me, which was very nice. But
And that was at a place called Uncle Sam's.
Right, which turned into First Avenue.
Which is featured in the film
Purple Rain. Now it's a game show.
Yes.
Now, it's featured in the film.
Mr. Lewis, so you...
Yeah, now I want to see what they got for Terry. This is going to
be good.
Whatever
it is going to be good.
Let's put image number 1 up on the screen, please. So...
Yes.
The funk.
So
Funk is in here.
Who's in the center here of this photo?
That happens to be me.
Okay. Now this is the band Flyte Time, which is you would adopt as the
Was our-
name
yeah.
of the productions you've been doing. For
And they
all
were
these
our
years.
rival band.
Right.
So you could see we had two different approaches.
Right.
You know.
Let's listen to a little bit of Flyte Time. This is entitled "It's the Things That You Do," co-written by Terry Lewis.
All right.
It is a roast.
It is a roast.
No, it's not a roast. I actually, I mean, I genuinely love these recordings in addition to all the other things that you guys have done. But I think it's also important just to illustrate, we may know the time, but you guys come from a band history, playing in
By
bands.
the way, just want to mention, so Cynthia Johnson, who was the voice of Lip Sync, remember the song Funky Town? Won't you take me to? That was her. Yeah, singing that song. She was in the band.
And
I played on it, even that it was Terry's band, just because we were, like I said, we were rival bands, but we were always friends. So even though this was Terry's band, he called me and said, "Would you come in and play keyboards on this?" So we always had the connection.
And please note, back in the day, because we were so broke, we couldn't pay attention. We would do everything live, and we play in the studio. We go in and we would record like the song one time. That's it. So, and that's what all those recordings were.
how competitive was the band scene in those days in Minneapolis?
It was absolutely competitive. I mean, cutting heads was what we used to love to do. And so many times Jimmy used to hand it to me. Boy, I used to get so heated. Like, he would come, the guys would show up a couple times. They ambushed us. Where we played a gig one time and he showed up. They had all their people there in the front rows and everybody. I think it was a snowstorm or something that night.
Yeah, probably so.
And
It was at the dinner, not the dinner theater. What was the
It's a
Chanhassen? Not the
supper
Chanhassen,
club.
but the
It was
supper club.
downtown.
Downtown, yeah. That's
Yeah, and so we set out to play, and it was a battle of the bands because we used to always do that. That's how you got people to come out, and they went on first, and everybody was there and hollering and screaming. And when we came out, and this was one of the weakest points of our band because we lost our horn section and probably a keyboard player or something, and Jimmy came out and they smashed us, and we got up there and everybody walked out. So I was like devastated. So I think 2 weeks later there was a festival outside at a place called The Way Community Center, and so I went on a hunt and I picked out some more people. We got it and we woodshedded and we came out and we stomped everybody at the festival. I mean, it was Jimmy's group, it was Prince and Morris's group. And we came out and we got this guy named Greg Williams, who was a really great singer. They came out and just killed everybody. It was over.
The thing, then the thing I remember about it was funny because at the dinner theater gig that basically our band won. And he's right. We had all our whole family and all our friends. Like, we had our whole cheering section. And we killed it. I mean, we killed it. But his band was at their lowest point because his band was always really good. And I remember telling my mom, no, we got to stay and watch Flyte Time. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, they're really good. They're really good. And then they came out, and I'm like, well, where's the horn section? Wait, where's their keyboard player? Wait, what? And they were terrible. And my mom looked at me, and she was like, Flyte Time, huh? And I was like, damn. So he's right. So 2 weeks later, we played the gig, and it wasn't one of our great gigs for whatever reason. We just weren't on it. And they came out wearing them costumes like in that picture. And came out with the P-Funk, and he had the Mutron hooked up to his bass. I was like going, oh, hell yeah. But I was looking at Terry, but it wasn't hate. It was like, I love this motherfucker. I love Terry Lewis. Because Terry was looking at me with the face, with that face. And I was like, okay, this is a good, I'm just ass kicking.
Like
Ass kicking. Yeah. I mean, but it was always cool. Like, we always, like I said, we were connected. We were just connected. Yeah.
You mentioned Prince, I guess Prince Nelson in those days. When did you first encounter him? Where was he as far as this point in the scene in Minneapolis?
Well, I met Prince in junior high school. Actually, we were in a piano class together, and it wasn't really much of a piano class. It was kind of a way to get out of school for an hour. You'd go, and they had this keyboard lab set up where there was a bunch of keyboards and stuff, and the teacher would give you, Mary Had a Little Lamb or London Bridge is falling down. They'd give you the sheet music and then they'd ask you to learn it. So we go, okay, teacher, and then we'd sit in and then when the teacher would leave, then we'd just be in there just jamming. And I remember, I thought I was a pretty good keyboard player at that point in time, but I remember Prince could just play rings around me. Like it was a whole nother thing that he had. And I thought I was good and he could just do stuff. And I just was like, man, this dude's nuts. And I remember that year they put together a band for like a school, like a play or a musical or something. And they said, who wants to be in the band? And I said, I'll be in the band. And they said, okay, what are you going to play? And I said, I'll play drums. It's like, okay, cool. Prince, what are you going to play? I thought he was going to say keyboards. He said guitar. I'll play guitar. And I'm going, I didn't know a dude played guitar. Oh, that's cool. And we had a bass player and, keyboard player, whatever. Okay, so we're good. So we're practicing. We're doing our thing. It's all cool. So then we take a break. So Prince starts playing the guitar solo from this song called Make Me Smile by Chicago. And back in the day, that was like the quintessential guitar solo. Like if you were a guitar player, you needed to know that solo. And he note for note just ripped it off. Like killed it, right? And I'm like going, damn, wow, that's good. So I go to the bathroom. I hear somebody on the drums. I'm thinking it's the band teacher on the drums. I come out, it's Prince on the drums. Like, I don't even want to sit down behind the drums anymore. It's like, dude, you got it, man. I mean, he was such a phenom. And then he had this band called Grand Central, right, which Morris was the drummer. Morris Day was the drummer in that band. And Andre Simone was the bass player. And they were a really good band, but honestly, our bands would kick his band's ass. But he himself, you just knew. He had something. But he started doing demo tapes and stuff. There was a studio called Moon Sound, and he would go to this studio, the 16-track studio, and do these tapes, and he'd do them all himself, every instrument. Go in and play the drums and play the keyboard and play the bass, and he'd do everything himself. So his whole thing was, I'm going to make it. I'm going to get up out of here. And we were all rooting for him. Because we were like, we knew how talented he was, and we knew that if he got out, that gave all of us a chance. So we were actually really like rooting for him to get out.
So when he signed his record deal, was that seen pretty much as a lifeline then for the rest of the scene? I mean, did you guys have a plan in order of what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it?
I think everybody had their own idea of what, at that time, we used to say getting over. But really, back in that day, it actually meant getting better. I think getting overturned, it turned a different way later on. But it was always known that Prince was going to be a phenom because he's the only guy that ever could just take anyone's instrument and play it better than them. Yeah. And that was just kind of the standard issue. I'll play it like this. And you say, I can't play it like that. But we were just happy for him to get out because other people had gotten out of Minneapolis, but none that close, nothing that tangible. So what it did is it gave everybody hope. So at that point, everybody just committed to being better musicians.
Because as a musician in Minneapolis, could you support yourself if you were in a black band in Minneapolis?
If you were a black musician in Minneapolis, you had very few options to play. So what we had to do is become entrepreneurs and create options. And so what we would do is we would rent hotel ballrooms or wherever we could rent and say, okay, we'll take the door, you take the bar, and we're going to have a gig. And then we'd have to counsel with all the 5 families and say, okay, we're going to do like everybody gets paid this amount and the winner of the battle gets this amount. And so we'd be that way. And there was a group called The Family that they were like gangsters. The before mentioned place I talked about, the Way Community Center, that was their home, and they were like gangsters. You didn't want to lose the battle because you would you would lose the war too. They started pulling out guns and machetes and everything else. So when they got involved, man, you always just let them win. Yeah. But actually, Prince ended up, before he left Minneapolis, that was the band he was in. And that was, Randy Barber, Sonny Thompson, Joe Lewis. Yeah. It was a great band.
Great band. They were tremendous. Yeah, it was very competitive, and it was, if you've seen Purple Rain, the whole kind of idea of Purple Rain was there's one club, and all the bands are trying to play in one club, and they're like, well, we got 4 bands, but I only got 3 slots. And that was kind of the way we grew up. It was very competitive, but it was good for us because it taught us that it doesn't really matter how good you are if you can't, first of all, find a place to play. So if you can't find a place to play, you make your own place. And then the economics of it was that we started pulling, you know, we would have a job and we would end up playing a gig, and we'd take all the people from all the clubs that wouldn't let us play. And then the next thing you know, the clubs would be sitting empty, and everybody would go, "Where's everybody at?" And they're like, "Well, they're down watching the band you wouldn't let play," you know. And so it became sort of like legend, our bands and stuff. It's like, no, you got to go down and see them because it's going to be a great show. And there was no internet, obviously. There's no, you know, tweets or no nothing like that. So we like printed up flyers and we put them on everybody's windshield of their car and all that kind of. I mean, it was like you just had to become a business person in addition to doing your music stuff.
So how did Flyte Time become the time?
Well, there was a short transition period. Prince was out on tour, and he took Morris with him to do some filming of his shows. During that period, Prince was still working on some of his records, and he did a song with Morris called Party Up. He told Morris, I'll make this long story short. He told Morris that if he did the song with him, he could take the credit and get paid for it, or he'd do a band for him. Morris chose the band. And so at that time, it was a transition period for Prince also, because he was changing his band. Because I remember getting the call from Prince first, and Prince asking me to be in his band. Because he was Andre Simone was transitioning out, so he said he called me. He said, "Terry Lewis." I said, "Yeah, Sprint. You want to be my bass player?" I said, "Sure." Learn all my songs. That was it. So, like a month later, I get a call from Morris. Morris said, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna start this thing. I want you to be the bass player." I said, "Well, I already talked to Prince about doing his thing." He said, "Well, which would you rather do?" I said, "I'd rather be with you," because Morris was like one of our guys. He used to play with us as well. And so I chose to do that. And so at that point, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And he said, "Well, keep together the band you got." And in that band at that time, we had Alexander O'Neill was our singer, Jelly Bean Johnson was our drummer, Monty Moyer was our keyboard player, and I was jabbing at Jimmy to get back in the group to get him to come and be the other keyboard player. And so eventually that happened. And so we went on for the next month, and they came back, and they started to record, and actually the group was going to be called The Nerve at the time. So we had a meeting. Yeah. It's the infamous meeting with Alexander O'Neill, Prince, and the rest of us. And Alex couldn't see eye to eye with Prince about the paper. You know,
Prince, I need the paper.
I need some paper, Prince. And
I need a new house, a new car,
you know, things
swimming
like
pool
that
thing like that there.
And so
this whole band thing is cute and everything, Prince, but
Yeah,
Alexander O'Neill need the paper.
Yes, right. So I can't get the paper, so I just go and throw down the steak. Yeah. And so he threw down the steak, and we left there. And so they went back out on tour. Morris called back, said that I'm going to be the front guy, so put Jelly Bean back in. Jelly Bean was already our drummer. And that's when it became The Time, which is just a derivative of Flyte Time.
Right. And the only thing you didn't put in there was Jesse. Because Jesse had come to town, the guitar player. Jesse had come to town to audition for Prince. He thought Prince was looking for a guitar player. And Prince said, "No, I'm not looking for a guitar player. I'm looking for a bass player. But you should stick around in town, join one of the local bands, and just stick around town." So Jesse went and joined Morris's band. And everybody kept telling us, "Man, y'all see the guitar player Morris's band got?" Because it was still like, competitive and stuff. We were like, okay, went over and checked him out. And he was serious. 10-minute guitar solos and stuff, pink suit. We were like, "Oh man, this dude's good." So we recruited him. We said, "Come over and hear our band. Our band's better than your band, than you're in." So he came over to our band. He watched us play, and then he called Morris and he said, "Yo, Morris," he said, "nothing personal, but I'm gonna go join Flyte Time." And Morris basically said to him, that's cool. Go ahead and join them because pretty soon we're all going to be one band. And nobody knew really what that meant until Terry got the phone call, that we were all going to be in the same band together. So,
Right.
But that was how we all came together.
So you formed a band. Who was in charge then at this point?
In charge of
The band and the material and
Well-
what was going to happen. Like how did you figure that out and how did that get reconciled?
Well, I guess they say the best way to be a good leader is to be a good follower. At that time, it's like whoever needed to lead would lead. We always knew that this was Morris's thing. So Morris was absolutely the leader. And the producer of it all was Prince. So Prince in the early days did all the music. That was just the way it was, and we were absolutely okay with that.
The one thing I will add, though, is that although Morris was the leader of the group, the real leader was Terry. Because Morris, anything that came up, Morris would always defer to Terry and say, Terry, what do you think? And the reason is because Terry always, as he said earlier, Terry was always the leader. Whether it was athletics or whatever it was in his life, he was always the gatherer, the leader, the person to do that kind of stuff. So Morris always depended on Terry to do that stuff. But I can't say enough good things about Morris. Absolutely. That brother's, I'll tell you the greatest thing, I mean, not the greatest thing, but I'll just give you one example that I always remember, was back when we were in the time, and of course, as Terry said, Prince was doing all the music and basically doing everything, him and Morris. We were totally fine with that. But we wanted to get out on our own and start writing and doing things ourselves. And Prince wasn't always happy about that, but Morris was. Morris was always very encouraging to us and told us, you guys go do what you do. But then he called a meeting one day and told the whole band. He said, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking acting lessons because I want to do different things, right? Jimmy and Terry are out there writing and producing and doing their thing. The rest of y'all, I suggest, figure something that you want to do out because this band ain't going to last forever. So everybody find something that you want to do and start doing it. And I have so much respect for him doing that because it was encouraging to us, but it also got everybody else off their ass too, or at least the people that should have gotten, off their asses. Some of them didn't. Some of them bought VCRs, right? So it was like, I mean, that's an inside joke, but it's like literally when we were coming off a tour, me and Terry were saving all our money to buy equipment and stuff so we could come to LA and start doing demos and trying to do stuff. And everybody else was like, and Terry said, who wants to come to LA with me? And I said, I'll go. And everybody else was like, man, you crazy, man. I'm saving my money for a VCR. And it's like, anybody even know what a VCR is? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's funny because back in that day, that was the coveted thing, a VCR. So it was like, we were like, okay, cool, But Morris told everybody, here's what's up. And we took his advice to heart.
Time put out some great recordings, but I think the legacy of the time for a lot of fans is you guys as a live act. And before we move on past this, I think it'd be remiss if we didn't take a little bit of a look at that. So if we could look at the second video, this is the time in 1982, live in Minneapolis, performing 777-9311.
That's still fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much work went into preparing that stage show, which Prince, I think, described you guys as the only band he was afraid of.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Because every night we tried to kick his ass. But he created the Frankenstein as far as work ethic. He had the work ethic that was uncomparable. Like you couldn't compare it to anything else. I mean, it wasn't even human. He would get up in the morning and come to our practice. So we would practice, we call practice at 10 o'clock. And we'd practice from 6 to 8 hours, right? And he'd be there with us, just drilling us. And, do it again, one more time, whatever. And then he'd quit and he'd go to his band practice. and rehearse for 6 to 8 hours. And then he'd go home and go to the studio and record 1999 and then come back to our rehearsal and jam with us and then do the same thing all over again. So, I mean, he was an amazing worker. He infused that in all of us. I mean, you know, and I thank you for the DNA, Prince. Thank you. Because it certainly changed our horizon because we know how to work. And I would definitely credit him with a lot of that.
By the same
Work ethic.
token,
Work ethic.
you were overworked to some degree on the road.
Not really.
No.
We were underpaid.
Say so.
Yeah, underpaid.
We was underpaid, though. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
You know, our first almost 2 tours we did, like a tour and a half. I think we made like $150 a week. But that wasn't the point. That high of that 30, 40 minutes that we got on stage was worth it, every bit of it. People call it paying their dues. I mean, I think it just taught us. It made us tight. It made us think about other things. For us, it was the greatest thing because the thing that we couldn't do before in terms of mixing the pretty with the funky, that's where we learned how to blend it. And, you know, it kind of created that place where that happy place where we could go and just get away because all the other BS didn't matter. Right. When we got on stage, it was just fun.
Did you feel a part of this Minneapolis sound that was coming out? Did you, from the inside, did you think of it as such, or, you know, was that just something that media or whoever would conveniently, you know, place an umbrella over all of these different groups and musicians?
Well, I think there was always a Minneapolis sound. I think if you want to like define it and put your finger on one person, you would have to do Prince as that person. But the funny part about it is that as great as Prince was, he pulled stuff from all of us. There was a bass player that actually went on to be with NPG, New Power Generation. One of Prince's renditions of groups, incarnations of group. He taught all of us a lot. Prince played with him. He taught Prince a lot about guitar, a lot about bass. He taught me a lot about bass, you know, in terms of tone, like the boogaloo, bubbly tone. a lot of that stuff Prince got after he heard some of my tone because I played with Sam and Dave for a short period. And Sam and Dave, you know, you couldn't play the bass. They said, you don't play anything over the E string and the A string. And you don't get up to the G and the D. You don't do that. You know, you play the bass. You're a bass player. So turn all that treble out of your bass, and that's where I learned to tone it down. And, you know, because at that time, you know, the Brothers Johnson, you know, all the trebly bass was going on and the plucking and picking. They said none of that. So, you know, I was torn in between that. And so they taught me that. And they taught me, okay, play behind the beat. You know, don't play on top of the beat. You be behind the beat because you want to make that transient fat, you know. So that all came from that world. And then Prince had his own world. And so if you listen to his record, some of that stuff translates into his world. And if you listen, if you know anything about Sonny Thompson, listen to Sonny Thompson play, and you'll see why Prince got some stuff from Sonny Thompson, which is why eventually he went back and got him when he figured he could manage it all, because that's a big thing to get your mentor to come and play in your group. You know, Larry Graham, another one. So we all borrow from each other. And he used to come to our practice, and we used to practice. And we used to always joke about it, say, okay, yeah, tomorrow we're going to hear that on Warner Brothers Records and Tapes, because that's exactly what would happen. But it was all good.
Yeah, we'd always say, Prince, why don't you go groove with your own band? But our group, we were funkier. So whenever Prince wanted to work something out that he had in his head, he'd come with our band. As he'd come over and he'd start jamming, and we'd all start jamming. And then back in that day, it was a cassette. All of a sudden, somebody would press record on the cassette. And then we'd play for an hour or something. Then we'd walk out. Prince would pop out the cassette. And the next day, we'd hear something very similar to what it was we jammed on, you know? And so it got to the point where Prince would walk into rehearsal. He'd start jamming. And we'd all kind of go, yeah, I think I'm gonna get something to eat. I think I'm gonna, we'd be like, because we were like, or I'd be noodling around on the keyboard and then he'd go,
Jimmy Jam, what's that you're playing?
"What you playing, Jimmy Jam? What are you playing?" Nothing, Prince. Nothing, man. Just trying to get a sound up, just nothing. But Prince, I tell you, the work ethic story is funny. I could almost demonstrate it. Maybe. Let's see. Is this up? Okay, so this is not the right sound, but I'll just show you something real quick. So we're just playing 7779311, right? So let me just show you real quick. So here was my lesson. So I'm at rehearsal, and by the way, these are the wrong sounds. So we're playing the song, and Prince goes, I'm going like this, because all I needed to do on 777 was just do a bass line. And all I would do that's all I would do. And we get done with the song, and Prince goes, "Jimmy Jam, what are you doing with your right hand?" I said, "I'm not doing anything, Prince. I'm copying the bass line of the song. You should play the chords that Monty's playing." I said, "Monty's already playing the chords, but you got to play the chords because it makes it bigger. It should sound better than the record." That was his thing, better than the record. Okay, so now I'm playing. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. Now, all right, I can do that. No worries. "Jimmy Jam, what note are you singing on the chorus?" "I'm not singing a part, Prince. It's like a 3-part harmony. Terry's got his, and I think Jesse's singing, and Morris. That's it. Find a note and sing. It's got to be bigger than the record." So now I'm 77793. All right. So I'm like, okay, cool. I can hit my note. I can play both my parts. I'm good. "Jimmy Jam, how come you're not doing the choreography?" "Prince, I'm standing at a keyboard, man. What choreography?" "Choreography is simple. You should be able to do the choreography." So now, I'm literally sitting out. I'm up there playing, and now I'm trying to hit the little choreography, and I'm trying to hit my guitar, and I'm 777, and I'm so frustrated. I'm just like, crazy. So we practice and practice and practice and practice. I'm so pissed off. So the very next day, come back to practice. There's Prince, 777. Let's hear 7779311. Okay. So we come in, and we come 7779311. So the point of the story is, I'm now, not only can I do all of those things, I can take my hanky off, I can tip my hat, I can peek over my glasses, I can put my hand in my pocket when I'm not playing. And the thing is that taught me, it's like, you can do a whole lot of stuff you don't even know you can do, but you need to work at it. And I thank Prince for that every single day, because he saw something in me that I didn't see. He's like, "Why can't you do it?" And I'm going, "I can't do that, Prince." And it got to be a habit on all of the songs, We would always find whatever he told us to do, we'd always then reach for the next thing. And that was why Terry said he created Frankenstein. Because one day, I'll tell you a quick story. So Morris he wore the same, we called that jacket, he always wore the Presley, right? So he got tired of wearing the Presley. He said, "Prince, I need a different jacket." And Prince was like, "No, that's what people expect to see you in, so you have to wear the Presley." So one day Morris just said, "Man, I'm getting me a new Presley." So he had somebody, make a new Presley for him. Looked like the old one, but a little shinier, a little new, nice and new. So at that point of the tour, I remember we were just firing on all cylinders. And we were kicking Prince's ass every single night.
About to be kicked off.
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, they were about to find us our own tour because it was getting a little too high. So we came out. Prince watched our show. We absolutely killed the show, I remember. And Prince comes backstage, and sometimes he would, it was before the show. Before the show. Prince would sometimes come to our dressing room and just kind of hang out, right? Just, whatever. And we'd be like, "Hey, Prince, whatever. He comes into the dressing room, and he goes, "What's up with you guys today?" And Morris says, hey, Prince, I got something for you. And Jerome hands him the new, it's in a thing. He unzips it. He said, look at this, Prince. I got a new Presley. And Prince goes, I created a monster, and goes running out the room. And, and at that point, it was like, yeah, we were about to get kicked off a tour because the heat was too much. But it's like Prince created that, and I think there was a little bit, I used to watch him watch us perform. And he used to try to hide off the side of the stage, and he'd watch us, and he'd be out there cracking up. Morris would be combing his hair, and then Jerome would bring the mirror out and be all this crazy stuff. And he would love it until he saw that we saw him, and then he'd like straighten up, like he'd get like a real straight face. And it was like, it was almost like he was like our dad or something. Like it was like he was so proud of his kids, but then it's like, but the kids shouldn't be beating me, It was interesting. But no, Prince was the best. We're so blessed to be able to work with him. Yeah.
How did he find out that you were doing your own productions then?
Well, so we were on tour, and this was 82 going into 83, and we basically had 4 days off in New York. And we had met Clarence Avant, and Clarence Avant is the person that owned Taboo Records, which was where the S.O.S Band recorded. Well, actually, that's how we got kicked out of the time. Is that the story?
Yeah, it's the same story.
The same story? Okay. So anyway, we go down to Atlanta to produce the S.O.S Band. And we did, we thought, wow, this will be cool. We got the 4 days off. We'll go in, and for 3 days we'll do it. And then the morning of the next show, which was in San Antonio, we'll just hop a plane, go to San Antonio. No big deal. So the morning we're leaving, it snows. But I'm talking about, now we're from Minneapolis, right? So snow is snow. This was it was what we call a dusting. Like you might take a broom and maybe broom your sidewalk off maybe, but it's not enough to do anything. It shut the whole airport down. So now we're in Atlanta at the airport, and the Atlanta airport was crazy because there was 4 different terminals. We were just trying to get any flight out so we could connect and get to San Antonio. And the whole airport totally shut down. And at a certain point, we realized we're not going to make the gig. So they went on that night and did the gig without us, which was interesting. But Prince played from behind the stage because he knew all the parts. He did the records, right? So he played. Jerome, Terry's brother, stood in Terry's place and acted like Terry. And the gig went off, and I don't think people to this day really knew that they weren't getting the full group. And when we finally got there, we got fined. They said, oh, you're fined $3,000, which was laughable because we were only making $150 a week. So it's like, you're finding us $3,000 out of what? It's like we're not making any money anyway. But that was kind of how we got found out. And so then there was we were still cool because we were fine, but the thought was, why'd you go? That's what you get for going down and seeing them girls. Everybody thought we went down to see some girls in Atlanta. So it was cool. But then what happened? Billboard magazine came out. And there was a picture of us with the SOS Band. And we were like trying to hide every Billboard magazine because there's no internet now. So it wasn't like you could look it up on the net. It's like you had to see the Billboard. And every time we would see a Billboard magazine, we'd like hide it. And, Prince was like, where's my Billboard? Like, I don't know, Prince. We'd like hide them. There'd be a ton of them. The manager would have one, and the booking agent would have one, and we were like hiding them all, right? And of course, finally he saw our picture in there, and he knew what was up. So, that summer, we ended up being called to Sunset Sound to do we thought a time gig or recording, and we were supposed to be mixing the SOS records we had done. And we got in a room, and it was myself, Terry, Jesse, Prince, and Morris. Prince just simply goes, I told you guys not to produce outside acts, and you did, so you're fired. And I was like, okay, cool. And I got up and left. Terry stayed in the room, tried to reason for a little bit. So now we're outside Sunset Sound, and we, as we call it, kicking rocks. You're just kind of out there just moping around and stuff. You're like, what do you want to do, man? And we were like, well, we still got the recording session up the street. Why don't we go up there and see what's going on? So we go up to the studio called Larrabee Sound. Steve Hodge is the engineer. And by the way, the only reason we knew Larrabee Sound and Steve Hodge was because of liner notes, which aren't on records anymore for whatever reason. But on the liner notes when we were kids and we would read, And we like Steve Hodge and we like Larrabee sound. We like something about that. So that's why we picked that studio, just from off the liner notes. So we walk in. I don't even think we had met Steve Hodge at that point. So we walk in and he says, "What's wrong with you guys?" And we said, "Hey, we just got fired from the Time." He said, "Really?" I said, "Wow." He said, "Well, I don't think you have anything to worry about because this record you guys got here is a smash." And we were like, "Really?" And he had mixed enough to know. And he was right, and it was a smash.
And what was that song called?
Just Be Good to Me.
All right, let's listen to S.O.S Band, Just Be Good to Me.
Okay. Somebody was singing that up front. I heard a little high-low unison going on. Yeah. All right.
Why do you think S.O.S Band was such a great vehicle for your songs? You guys, this was the first, well, not the first actually, but one of the biggest of the early ones.
Yeah, it was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was the first. Yeah, I mean, we did a song called High Hopes before that we didn't produce. Actually, Leon Silvers produced it, we wrote it. And actually, that song was the one that actually got us the meeting with Clarence Avant, which was very pivotal, very important for us. You know, when I earlier was talking about, you know, we were talking about the funky bottom and the pretty top. This was the culmination of that to me, first of all. It was the funky bottom, but it was the pretty melodies over the top, and even Glockenspiel's on that record too. So it was really a good combination of what it was we did, or where we found our place. The other thing was we were always, I think one of our strengths as producers was always, if it was an established group we were working with, doing the homework and figuring out what it was that worked about what they did. And SOS Band had, I mean, Take Your Time, Do It Right, which was their first record, was just huge. And they weren't able to follow it up. And that's pretty common. And we listened so much to Take Your Time, Do It Right that the certain elements we pulled from that song, the Glockenspiel, which was part of it, which was important, the repetition of the bass line where it's over and over and over and over. Like there's no bridge, there's no nothing. It's just the same thing over and over. Like we thought that was the key. All of those things. We thought those were important elements to making a great SOS Band record. And then at the end of the day, as fans of a group, because you have to be a fan to work with somebody, it's always been our barometer, what would we like to hear them do? If someone said, wow, there's a new SOS Band record out, what would we want it to sound like? And then that's what we try to create.
In addition, there was that little machine over there, which made its appearance on this record.
The 808. So the 808 drum machine, and 808 is interesting because nowadays it's people think of it as a sound, right? And in any, well, really in all music, but certainly hip hop music now, when you hear the low kind of sine basses that go boom, 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 those low basses, it's all basically based off of an 808 sound. But it was just the drum machine that we wanted a drum machine, and they just brought us that drum machine. They brought us an 808 because we didn't know. We
actually used the 303, I think, at first.
Well, we did on the demo.
On For Your Love, we did.
Oh, you're right. We did.
Yeah,
you're right. The
and that's
303. That's what it was. And they didn't have a 303, so they got us an 808. Was that what it was?
Yep. Exactly.
And that's how we ended up with the drum machine. But it's a very familiar drum machine. So this one, I had programmed a beat. We did a song called Tell Me If You Still Care. And Tell Me If You Still Care was kind of the first time we really got a chance. The Just Be Good To Me beat was also done in the Roland. But we got a chance to really mess with it and figure out like little things that it did that I thought was kind of cool. So if you Tell Me If You Still Care, we had the beat in it. We programmed the beat, and the beat was basically this. But what we realized was there's a little switch on here that makes it the hand clap, so you end up with. So this ended up being the beat. And then as the tape, we're just rolling tape. And then when the song would come in, we would just turn it back to that again. So it was all just kind of done on the fly. And then toward the end of the song, I kind of got bored, so I'm kind of messing around with the little switches. And there's a decay switch on here. And the decay switch works for the bass drum, so I just went, that puts a little boom boom on it. And when we did it, we didn't know that that was going to become like the thing. So for us, it was just like, okay, now we got to figure out what we're going to do with that boom. So Terry said, lyrically, why don't we just say, listen to my heartbeat, boom, for you, baby. And so the engineer just put, a bunch of extra little stuff on it. And that became sort of the boom of the 808 sound. And it became, obviously associated with us and a whole lot of people, but the S.O.S Band sessions were really the first time we had a chance to use it. And it really ended up shaping a lot of, the songs and stuff that we did. We had no idea. We just had ours. This one's in actually really great shape. We just had ours refurbished, our original one. And it was very cool because the Roland folks, actually, I guess there's a chip inside of there that remembers everything you did. So the engineers that were refurbishing it were knowing all our beats. They were like, man, who did these beats? Oh, that's Jam and Lewis. So, oh, man, they knew what they were doing on that. It was like, okay, cool. So that was kind of nice to hear from them. But no, it's been a great drum machine for us, for sure, over the years. Very influential. And we had a Lynn drum up here a little bit earlier, but the Lynn drum we used a lot back in that day. All the Prince records from back in the day were the LM1. We had an LM2 sitting up here for a minute. And then the Oberheim synthesizers were a big deal. We have an OB6 here, which is basically like a new version of what we had called the OB8. So it's a lot of familiar kind of stuff out here, but kind of the sounds that we kind of started off with. And, and the OB8, when you talked about the Minneapolis sound earlier, a lot of that was the idea of, having keyboard players do horn parts on synthesizers rather than horns. A lot of that was that a lot of the horn lines we did on synthesizer instead, and I think that also probably contributed to what is known as the Minneapolis sound.
You, very early on, I guess, were successful writing for female singers and female artists. Was that just a coincidence, or was it something, that you had about your craft that made it simpatico for those particular artists?
Well, we like the ladies. So, yeah, we love the ladies. We love the ladies. So we'll start off with that. But I don't really know. I don't think it was so conscious. I think a lot of it was, the first acts we worked with, we did Gladys Knight and the Pips. We did Cheryl Lynn, Climax. I mean, we love Climax because Patty Austin. We love Climax, though, because they were a female band, and we thought that was so cool. And, one of the things we did with Climax was that they had a lead singer named Lorena who was really a good singer. But they had a girl named Bernadette, and Bernadette was the drummer, but Bernadette had so much attitude. And the thing that we did, I think, for Climax was put Bernadette up front and let her have we called her Bernadette because for us, she was like a female Morris Day. So she had all that attitude. So when they're hit records like Men All Pause and those kind of records, that's all Bernadette saying that stuff and with the attitude. And then when they did a song called I Miss You, which was like their big ballad, the bass player, who's a girl named Joyce Irby, we put her up front as a lead singer because we thought she had just a really cool voice. So with Climax, it was just a matter of, I guess it was sort of like coaching a team. Like, you just moved the guard to forward, you moved we just kind of rearranged the pieces. They already had the talent, and they went on and became very successful. So, we always love doing that. Like I say, if it's someone established already, we love going in and trying to figure out that formula to get back whatever it is that they need to do. And for us, it was just, they didn't recognize, they knew they were talented, but they didn't know exactly where to put the pieces of the talent. And I think we were able to do that with them.
And we also added them a certain amount of freedom, which is something that we like.
That's the truth. Yeah.
We allow them to just do what they like to do, right. Whereas the record company tried to impose its will as to what a hit was or wasn't.
Yeah.
I'd like to just go through a few songs since there's so many. And this is from an artist called Cherrelle. It's called I Didn't Mean to Turn You On.
You're right. Yeah, I like that one. And I would just and I gotta see that one is interesting because to talk about different influences. So we were just talking about it, as we said, the System. There was a group called the System, and the System had a record out. I think it was called "You're in My System," right? Yeah. Was their first one or whatever. But anyway, the idea was that the System really was Oberheim made a keyboard, a drum machine, and a sequencer that all went together. And these guys basically put those records together doing that. And I didn't know how to work a sequencer to save my life. So my whole thing was I just played everything live. And I was thinking about it on the S.O.S Band. You know, you have that repetitive bass line. It's like, dun, 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 dun. I played that the whole 8 minutes of the song, like straight through. And I'm going, I used to do that? And he said, yeah, we were in shape then. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we can probably get away with it. But the same thing on Didn't Mean to Turn You On. Other than the drum little turnarounds, basically everything was just kind of played. You know, that was the idea. And so it just was dawning on me how much, equipment changes the way you do stuff. And the fact that Oberheim, we had this OB8 synthesizer, we had this Art Bomni, which was the string kind of sound on there, and all of those things kind of coming together kind of made that record happen. So that was a cool one, and that was one of the first records we did back in Minneapolis because we had moved to L.A. We did S.O.S Band in Atlanta, and Cherrelle, we were working with her in L.A., but she was a brand new singer and a little bit nervous, and the whole idea of studio time and all that budget and craziness. And we went back and had some friends that had a basement studio. And so this was the first record we did in the basement studio.
What was cool about working in Minneapolis? Because eventually you went back there and made that your studio setup, your headquarters, for many years. But what was great about that?
It's home. It's comfort. Like, comfort is the number one thing. It's the number one human want. Comfort. Like, I'm around my family, I'm around my friends. I know how to access musicians. I know everything about this place. So when we went back there, we were immediately comfortable, and economics, which allowed us to not feel like we were on the clock pinching pennies to get something done. So it allowed us to just be creative. And so we loved that. So we never went back to LA to record anymore. We just stayed in Minneapolis pretty much.
The other thing I'll add to that is that Clarence Avant and his wisdom, and he gave us so much wisdom and continues to give us wisdom to this day, told us about the Hollywood sign. He said, make sure you don't get caught looking at the Hollywood sign when you're driving because you're going to crash. And that was good advice. And for a couple of young guys that were just kind of getting out there and having a few hit records, LA was not the place we needed to be. I'll just say that. There's a lot of temptations and a lot of things going on out there. We needed to take our butts back to Minneapolis. And then Terry was the one that really drove that decision, and he was totally right. He was like, we should go back to Minneapolis. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it worked out very well.
These songs are very healthy with hooks, different types of hooks. But I actually want to play this and maybe have a little discussion about that with reference to this song. This is another Cherrelle song featuring Alexander O'Neal entitled Saturday Love. All right, so there's a few different things here. There's the main hook, the chorus, I suppose. But then there are all of these other different things that stay in your head. One thing arrangement-wise I always notice from your productions is there'll be like this drum, and then there'll be like a splash where the keyboards come in, which is like, I guess before you even get into the hooks, like was that had to be a very conscious thing that you injected in a number of different songs. But in addition to that, like something so simple, days of the week, and yet, it's all right there. And to start it where it starts and end it where it ends is simple, but also, extremely difficult to do. What do you recall about making this?
Well, the thing I recall about making it is that I actually wrote the start of the idea in my apartment. I just got my penthouse high-rise bachelor pad apartment. in Minneapolis. And I had this, I couldn't fit like a real piano in there, so I got a Yamaha CP70, which was like a, it had real strings and stuff like a piano, but it was portable, right? And I sat down and I kind of came up with a little idea with the chords and stuff. And then in my mind, I started thinking Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, love. And I thought, wow, this is cool. This is great. So then I went to the studio later. Terry was there. I said, Terry, I got this idea. He said, what is it? And I instantly thought, this is the dumbest idea ever. How's it go, Jam? Well, it's sort of the days of the week. Like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I said, nah, forget it. It ain't no big deal. Terry's like, no. Well, how's it go? And I said, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm thinking, this is Sesame Street. This is so stupid. And so anyway, Terry says, play it. So anyway, I played it. And he was like, no, that's cool. He said, we can come up for something with that. Okay, cool. And put the simplest drum beat the drum beat took 3 seconds. Poo, ka, poo, ka. I mean, just real simple. We just played it. And in our minds, I don't think we ever thought that it was that. I didn't think it was that good. I just thought it was just something, right? Cherrelle, we started work. We were working on her record, and Alex, we had already done his record, and so we thought it would be cool to put them together. The thing about the song, and I don't know whether you noticed this or not, but the first verse and the second verse are exactly the same lyrics, and the only difference is the way they approach them and sing them. But the reason it's like that is because we never bothered to write a second verse. And so it's one of those things where now you look back on it and people go, wow, that was so genius. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure. Right? That's how you did. It's the same lyrics and that's so cool. It's like, okay. So I don't know, but I just remember that about the song. And of course, I remember Alex's voice, man, is just... First of all, both of those guys. Cherrelle, first of all, was such a trooper because we were just learning how to record. Like we had a studio, we had built this studio, and then we had the engineer walked out on us. So we had to learn how to work stuff. And this is back in the days, there wasn't plugins and all this computer stuff. It was like a physical patch bay where you had to plug something in to get the mic to work and you had to do all that. And luckily, Cherrelle was who we were working on. And so Cherrelle would go in the booth and we go, take your headphones off, Cherrelle, because we're going to start plugging some stuff in and there might be some problems, right? And sure enough, we'd go, and the speaker would blow or whatever. We'd be, sorry, Cherrelle. And she'd go, that's all right, baby. Y'all figure it out. It's all right. So she was real cool. And then Alex's voice, man, he's the best of the best. And we worked with a bunch of people. But the thing about Alex was able to do anything. He could do a ballad, like If You Were Here Tonight, like Sunshine, like something like that. And then he could go do a song like Fake, which is like the funkiest record ever. So it would, with ease, he could do either one. Probably no more talented guy that we've ever worked with. So to put them together was just cool. I mean, I think that's really what makes this record work, is their chemistry together was amazing. And the hooks, we always say, we have a saying, we just always say more hooks in a tackle box. We always feel like each part of the song should have a hook. It should be memorable throughout. So no matter where you start the song or play the song, in the old days it was on a record, so it would be like a needle drop. Like wherever you put it on the record, there should be something there that catches your attention right away.
Yeah. I mean, even the last part of that song, that Never on Monday, Sunday's Too Soon, that's like an entire, could be a whole song unto itself right there. And you've described this gentleman over here as a vocal and lyric master. Yes. And I'd like you to elaborate on that a little bit more as to why that is.
Well, here's the thing. I'll give you an example. There's many examples. I'll just give the one that pops into my head always is, I'm very long-winded, so it takes me a while to actually say something. And Terry can sum up what I say in 3 words. And I think that's part of his gift. And so I remember when we were working on Rhythm Nation with Janet, and we had this concept for a song that was living in a world they didn't make. Like that was the concept of the song. because we were watching CNN and there had been a school shooting and all these kids had been getting killed, and we just thought, we got to talk about that on a record. We got to address this. And so we were in our Flyte Time, our first Flyte Time studio, but we were building a second bigger one. And so Janet kept saying, we need Terry. And I said, yeah, we do. So Terry shows up at the studio at the old Flyte Time where we're recording. He comes in the door with like carpet samples and all these different stuff for this new studio. Jan, what do you think about this carpet and whatever? I'm like, Terry, no. We need lyrics. And he says, well, what's the concept? And I said, okay, so these kids got killed at this school. And, it's not their fault. It's the adults' fault. It's our mistakes, man. It's us messing up, right? The adults are messing it up for the kids. And it's like, something. And I go into this whole, and me and Janet are telling him this whole thing. And Terry just goes, living in a world they didn't make. We're like, yeah. Terry goes, 10 minutes later, has the lyrics, hands us the lyrics. There you go. And that was it. And that to me, that song is obviously as relevant today as it was, 25 years ago when we did it with what's going on in the world right now. So that to me is the gift that he has for lyrics. And also, we played something from the Unbreakable album earlier, but lyrically, through Janet's growth as a lyricist, but also Terry's growth in knowing her so well, I think lyrically that is by far her strongest album, if you listen to the Unbreakable album, and it's because of Terry. And, for instance, she said to Terry, I got this concept for a song, Black Eagle, and it's got to be about kids around the world and about abuse and about this and blah, 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 Black Eagle. And Terry's like, okay. And this didn't take a day. Terry was literally like 5 days in this little, I call it the cubicle at our studio. It's like this little place where he's got his little laptop and he just sits there and there's like one light, like the accountant or something, right? And he's just over there just coming up with a line by line. And every day he'd come up and show her a line. What do you think of this? And she'd go, oh yeah, I love that. He'd go, okay, cool. And every day I go, how you coming, Terry? Oh, cool, it's coming. And finally, so if you listen to the song A Black Eagle on the album, I mean, it's just, he just has a knack for that. And then the vocal part of it is, one more story. Vocally, I call him Vocal Master, and that's about the vocal production. And there's two songs to me, Human by the Human League. If you listen to that record and listen to Phil Oakey's vocal, now Phil Oakey on all of the Human League records was always very robotic and like that. But if you listen to Human, there's a lot of feeling on that. And that vocal took a week, That was Terry just, drilling him down and knocking him down and giving him the confidence to try to step out of, this robotic thing that he had and actually sing. And that vocal to me that's the best vocal he's ever done, Phil has ever done. The other song there's a song we did with Usher called You Remind Me. And when L.A. Reid actually sent us the track to that song and said, this song is either off the album or my first single, but we can't get the vocal right. So I told Usher to go back in and redo it, and he said the only person he'll go back in and do a vocal with is Terry Lewis. So Terry said, okay, I'll do it, let's go. Terry goes out, we're still in Minneapolis at this point. Terry goes out to L.A. They work on the vocal for like a week. It was really a thing where the guy that sang the demo of the song, Usher was trying to sing it like the guy that did the demo instead of singing it like himself. So the psychological part of breaking Usher down to basically make it his own song, he had to first forget what he had heard. Like, I got to take that totally out of your brain, first of all. Then I got to rebuild you as Usher, and now we got to sing this like an Usher song. You have to own this song. And when it was done, I remember we sent it to L.A., and he called like 2 hours later, and he said, you guys got the first single. And it was a #1 record and a huge record for him. So the vocals are so important, and we were taught that you're not a producer unless you can do the whole thing. You can do vocals. I know nowadays there's vocal producers and people that just do that. We were taught you got to do the whole thing. And so when it comes to lyrics, when it comes to vocal mastering, it's Terry Lewis is the guy.
Well, Terry, why do you think you have this gift, this talent? But then also, what would you advise people who aren't Terry Lewis, who, you know, don't have that pedigree as far as instructing somebody to try to get a performance out of them or directing somebody to get a performance out of them that you want?
Well, I think I get the gift because it's not about me. You know, I have a lot to say about certain things, but I like to say them very short because I don't like to mix up the words too much. Sometimes we get lost in the words. I think that's why writing, I can get it out. As far as working with people, my job and my aspiration is always to get the best of that person. So I want to meet them wherever they are and figure out what they need for themselves to get that out. So I always ask artists, the first thing I ask them, I say, well, okay, like Usher, I say, Usher, what is the key ingredient to an Usher record? And most artists go around the world, oh, the beat, the this, the that, the lyric, the that of it. I say, like, okay, really? You don't know what the key ingredient is. And so that key ingredient would be Usher. So if Usher's not good on the record, then the record's not a good Usher record. It could be a great record, could be a great record for anyone else, but how do I get the best of the artist on this piece of song or whatever it is, beat, whatever. So that's always my aspiration. And I don't mind, I have patience. I can just sit there and do it, and I allow the artist to just take after take after take until they feel like they have what they want. And then I don't have a problem sifting through it and comping it together.
Is it tougher to write a song that is just a love song? Is it harder than writing a song that has some melancholy to it? I mean, Just Be Good to Me or Saturday Love is kind of a sad song if you listen to some of the lyrics in terms of, you know, I think about you through the days of the week. But, you know, a song that's I love you, I love you, I love you. Like, how many ways can you say that? Is that a tough thing, or is that a thing that's not tough for you guys?
Love songs are really tough for me because love and idealistic love is tough because love is never idealistic. It's like true love, I guess you could say the agape love. It has no expectation. It gives all, takes nothing. That love is cool, but that's not the way we love. It's always conditional. So writing a love song is always about finding that condition that people covet. It's like, okay, I love you if, and I don't love you when. So, you know, like a song like Just Be Good to Me, you know, I don't care how you love them as long as you're doing that thing that I need you to do for me. That's one of those experiences, a kid growing up I saw in various households, you know, where there's always the mother, the mistress, and on and on and on. And, you know, it's easy to write about those kind of things. But the true love is always hard for me because it sounds so sappy.
Let's listen to this, actually, because this is a love song.
What? No, but but see, the thing about Tender Love was written for a movie. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it was that they sent us the scene in the movie. Now, the movie was Crush Groove, so it was like one of the first hip-hop movies. And Sheila E. was in it, and LL Cool J and a bunch of folks. So they sent it, they said, we need a ballad for this one love scene. And so the lyrics were really based on the scene that they sent us. Like when they say candles that light the dark, there was candles that were being lit in the scene, literally at that point in time. Now, when the movie actually came out, they chopped the scene all up so it didn't really matter because everybody thought, well, who wants to hear a ballad in the middle of a movie, particularly a hip-hop movie? And it ended up being our first actually top 10 pop record, this was. And we had no clue. And people at this point in time didn't know we were capable of writing a ballad, I don't think, at that point anyway. Certainly not a piano ballad. So it did a lot of things for us. It really opened up a lot of opportunities for us after that.
Yeah, and it's a physical love ballad. That's different.
Yeah.
That's just nasty.
Speaking of crush groove and hip hop, actually, what was your relationship with hip hop at this time? Did you see it as something that you could embrace? Or is it something because you came from a band background that seemed somehow foreign? Or were you comfortable with it?
I loved hip-hop music. And I always say to this day, I love hip-hop. I'm not of hip-hop. Because hip-hop to me is a culture, and it's a way of growing up. And I grew up as an R&B guy, and a pop guy. So that's where I grew up. But I love hip-hop. And when Rapper's Delight came out, I was I was DJing at that point in time. I was not in a band. It was between the time I was in the band for a while. I quit. I got frustrated with the band, and I started DJing. And I DJ'd all different clubs. I had a teen club. I had an R&B black club. I had a gay club. I had like different nights of the week I was at different clubs. And I remember when Rapper's Delight came out, and I remember getting it from there was a record pool I would go get all my records from. And I remember I got the record, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to play this. And Good Times by Chic was my #1 record at that point in time. So as soon as it went to the break in that, I just slammed it in. And I remember everybody on the dance floor stopped dancing and turned and looked at the booth. They thought I was doing it. And I'm like, what are you looking at? Just dance. This is the record. It's not me. And then everybody was like, oh, okay, cool, And then I remember calling the record pool, and they said, how did the record work? And I said, oh my God, it's amazing. Where's more of this? I need more of this. And I remember getting the Funky 4+1 More and Treacherous 3. And I just totally dug into it. I absolutely loved it. From the moment I heard rap music, man, I was so with it. I loved it.
How about you, Terry?
I love hip hop. I love everything about it because it's fun. Well, it used to be fun, and it turned into something different. But I respect that as well. I mean, I love all expression, I believe that's all. Everything is good as long as there's another alternative. You just can't make everything one thing. So across the board, I just like freedom and freedom of music. But hip-hop was always cool for me. Being in the club when Jimmy was DJing was always the most fun for me because as an R&B person, as a band person, I would get a chance to groove to somebody else's groove. And so that was always a great thing. And hip-hop was always so fun. It didn't take itself serious. It was always a party thing. And, that became part of culture, obviously.
Did you, obviously you guys have been able to adapt to all sorts of movements, from the band era to embracing electronics and drum machines and embracing sampling and all of these different facets. Some of your contemporaries seem like they had a harder time adjusting. Why do you think that you were able to and have been able to navigate these different changes and movements over time? Have you had to check yourself in terms of remaining open-minded to something that maybe you wasn't in your wheelhouse, as far as understanding initially, or
Well, I thought there's actually a whole lot of places to go here. Number one, I would say because there's the both of us, and even though we're very compatible, but we have different tastes, and things that I like, he may not like, and vice versa. But we also have the respect, and part of respect is loving what someone else loves. And if I love something, even if Terry doesn't see it, he loves it because of me. And that goes the same with him. So that's the first place. It starts with the respect. Terry is also very technically, he's always into the next thing. He's always technically looking for the next thing. Like literally, like we now take Pro Tools for granted, right? But like the early versions of those things, Terry had. And Terry had on this little Commodore, I don't know, it was a Commodore computer or an Apple computer. I don't remember what he had. It was PC. And he had these little programs with sound waves and stuff on them. And I'm like, Terry, what are you doing, man? He said, man, I'm going to figure this shit out, man. I'm going to figure this out, man, because this is where it's going. And I'm like, yeah, man, okay, whatever. I had no tolerance for it, but he did. And every piece of technology along the way, he was on the phone today. We're setting up to work with a band next week. And there's a new wireless technology we wanted to use, and Terry's on the phone with the guy today on the way coming over here. We need this in our studio by the weekend. We need this set up. You know, it's like that's what drives him. So I think in that way, technologically, it's about keeping up with whatever's going on and using the tools that are available. So I think that's part of it. But also we have kids, and our kids keep us very young because we listen to what it is that they listen to. And we don't really take the attitude of, we love the music from back in the day. Like, give me a good James Brown record, a good Sly and the Family Stone record. I'm all over that. Like, I'd rather hear those records than hear our records, quite honestly. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we can't hold a candle to those records. We can't hold a candle to Gamble and Huff's records. We can't hold a candle to Quincy Jones records. But we do what we do, and we do it pretty good. But we aspire to do that. So some of the stuff what I hear my kids play, that's, you know, it's nothing but boom, and I go, okay, but you know what? They like this. So there's got to be something there. Something there is affecting them the way that whatever we grew up with affected us. So we keep a very open mind about it. And we also, because we're collaborators, if somebody comes in and goes, man, you heard the latest Drake, or you heard the latest, Chance the Rapper, you heard the whatever. It's like, damn right we've heard it. Because we got to hear it. We have to, It's part of what we do. So when we're referencing things, we can reference those types of things. So I don't know if that totally answers the question. I mean, Terry's got a take on it too, but but Terry said it though. You got to be open. You got to let music happen, and you got to be open to it. You can't just dismiss stuff and go, I don't hear it. I don't like it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and my explanation will be like something that Quincy Jones said, to quote Quincy. He said, "You're only as old as your ability to accept and process new things." So you have to be able to leave yourself open to something new and not be afraid of it. Because you don't want to sound like somebody, I can't do that email. I ain't going to talk to nobody on the email. Because if you're not doing that, you're left behind. You're done. It's over. Your world is over. So you got to be able to take whatever the information that's coming in and say, okay, how can I put this down in the world that I live in and make it relevant to what I do? So that's what we've always tried to do. We try to get ahead of things. Right now, Stephen Slate came out with a console that's just the iPad. And so when everybody saw that, everybody was crazy. Oh, that's never going to work. I said, that's going to be the biggest thing since ice cream and cake. Why? Because that's all kids know. You give a baby an iPhone, the baby knows how to work it in like 2 minutes. You give them an iPad, they know how to pull up movies when they're 2 years old. So that's all they're going to know. They're not going to know faders, like tactical faders, and you feel them. They're going to know the iPad. I can just push it and push it up. It works. So for the future and for the price point, it makes sense to me, because I think everything is all about technology and economics. That's all it is.
People used to, I remember when you mentioned sampling earlier, and I remember when sampling came out, and I remember people talking to me all the time about, like, well, when Beethoven was making music, and, when Mozart was making music, and I'm going, these guys would be using this stuff, whatever's available. You use whatever the best, if you're a creator, whatever the best stuff is available is what you use. I don't care who you're, Beethoven or whatever. You can say, if all he had was a piano, that's cool. But if he found a harpsichord, or he found a celeste, or he found whatever it was, they were going to use it because that was what was available to them. So I don't agree with that. And the other thing people always used to say was, like, on the sampling thing, is be like, I know y'all don't like sampling, huh? Because that's like cheating. And I'm like, well, no, not really. I mean, I love sampling. I love doing a record like All For You that samples Glow of Love by Change and Luther Vandross, and have the writer of Glow of Love come up to me and go, man, you bought me my house. Because I'm not into stealing. I'm not into taking something illegally and using it, but if people get credit for it, the idea of introducing people to new music through old music and the music I grew up with. I sampled Ventura Highway by America, one of my favorite songs growing up. We did a song called Someone to Call My Lover with Janet. And I met Dewey Brunel and the other gentleman in America, I can't remember his name. I met him on a plane. And he said, hey man, you built me my swimming pool. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad. But you guys, I was raised on your music. So I'm so happy to be able to do it. And by the way, when I played the track for Janet, she had never heard it in her life. And that was great. So I introduced her to something that she really loved. So I love sampling. I love the technology. The thing is, don't let the technology use you, you know, but you use it to the way that it works for you.
And, you know, there is an art to building something around a sample rather than just relying on a sample. I don't want to skip past, I don't want to skip past some of the most important records you've made, but it makes sense to maybe listen to a bit of this right now. You said this is one of your favorites that you've done. Why is this? Why is that in particular your favorite?
Okay, I'll try to make a long story short, which is, you can tell it's tough for me to do. But, okay, so for so many reasons. First of all, James Brown. Start with a James Brown sample, Papa Don't Take No Mess. One of my favorite James Brown songs ever. So that's the guitar part. The pink, 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 you know, the vapors. I mean, there's tons of songs that have used it, right? So that was number one. Impeach the President, which is the drum sample, right? Just a classic drum sample. So taking those two elements of hip hop and then thinking about putting chords over the top of it and making an actual song on it with changes and that whole thing with a vibe. That was the dream in my head. And what happened was we were getting better as producers at that point. And what used to happen in the early days is we would have something in our mind and it would come out totally different than what we thought, but it would still come out good. But it would not be what we heard in our heads. This was one of the first records we did. What we heard in our head was exactly what came out. So when we got all the elements together, I remember there was a guy named Mark Mazzetti who worked at A&M Records, and this was Janet had moved to Virgin at this point. And I played the track for Mark Mazzetti because he was a huge Janet fan, and I said, what do you think of this? He said, oh my God, I love this. He said, this is a smash. Has Janet heard it? I said, she hasn't heard it yet. He said, oh, I love this. She's going to love this. This is great. So when Janet came to the studio later, I put the track on, and I said, listen to this. And I was all proud. Listen to this. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. I was like, really? Yeah, it's okay. Let's work on something else. I'm like, okay. So I was like, wow, what? Maybe I did something wrong. So anyway, we were getting ready to take a break for the holidays. It was around Christmas. And so I just made her a cassette with all the songs we were working on, right? So she goes on vacation for a couple of weeks. She comes back to the studio. She walks in the door and she said, oh my God, we got to work on that track. And I said, what track? That track you gave me. Oh my God, that track. We got to work on that track. I said, what track are you talking about, Janet? The track you gave me. Oh my God. And she puts it on and I said, the track you don't like? She said, she said, oh no. She said, but it can't, we were listening, she was in Anguilla, and she said, we were in Anguilla, and all of a sudden the track came on, and we were looking at the ocean, and everybody was like, wow, what is this? And she said, I get it, you know, whatever. I said, okay, good. So she was actually staying at my house, and she had a bedroom at my house. And about 2 in the morning, my intercom goes off, and she goes, Jimmy, are you awake? And I said, I am now. She said, I got the concept. That's the way love goes. But not in a bad way. Not in a, that's the way love goes like it's messed up, but in a good way, that's the way love goes. And I said, okay, great. We'll hit it tomorrow at the studio. And we did. And she basically came up with all of the melodies and all the stuff for it. And then the one thing we added was the Like a Moth to a Flame Burned by the Fire. And then we sampled her voice. So that's her voice kind of doing that in different octaves and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was just so cool. And then even the story of how that became her first single, the whole time making the record, we thought it was the first single from the album. But earlier on, some record executives had come up and heard If. It just happened to be the record we were working on the day they came. And in their minds, If was the single. But that was the only thing they had heard. So Janet went to LA for some meetings. And for last thing we said to her is, don't let them talk you into If, because we all know That's the Way Love Goes is a single. She comes back and she goes, If is the single. I said, what are you talking about? I said, no. She said, no, they think, we can do a great video and it's dance and it sounds like me and blah, blah, blah. And we said, no, that's whatever. So now fast forward about a month later, we're finishing the album. The last song we're doing is a song called New Agenda. And we're doing it with Chuck D and Hank Shockley from Public Enemy. So we get done with the session about 3 a.m. We're still mad about the single not being That's the Way Love Goes. So I said, Janet, can we play them the 2 songs we're thinking about for singles? Yeah. So we go in. So we play That's the Way Love Goes, and they're grooving. And then we play If. They're grooving. And we said, okay, what do you think? So they go, well, that if just sounds like Janet. That just sounds like I can see the video and the dancing and that if is crazy, man. That if is crazy. So Janet's like looking at us like, and we're like going, damn. And then they go, but that other song, what's it called? That's the Way Love Goes. That other song? That other song is like some Sade shit. It's like some shit where, you know how Sade, when she comes out with a record, there's no like big fanfare that she's coming out with a record. It's just all of a sudden you look up and somebody goes, oh, what's this? Oh, Sade record. Oh, cool. Let's check this out. He said, that's that record. And so we looked at Janet and went, and Janet said, That's the Way Love Goes. You're right. That's the Way Love Goes. That's the single. And that's how it ended up being the first single. And we were absolutely right. It was,
But that was also, by this point, this is your 3rd album with Janet. And there are 3 different identities with these records. And she's reinventing herself to a degree with each one. It's probably important for you just to even explain, how you guys initially gained that trust with her to produce Control and reinvent herself. I mean, I can only imagine what it's like to be a Jackson. In that family, at that time, she was better known, I guess, as an actress than even a musician.
Well, it was interesting because we had met her. She actually came to a Time show. She was huge fans of the Time. And the story was we were supposed to actually produce someone else on A&M Records, a girl named Sharon Bryant, who used to be with Atlantic Star. And we were big Atlantic Star fans, and we were like, oh, yeah, we'd love to do the record. So there's a rumor that the Control album is really what we were going to do for Sharon Bryant, which is absolutely not true. I mean, we would have did a different record because we always tried to tailor the records to fit the artist we were doing. So basically, they sent us the roster, and they just said, John McClain, who was the A&R person there, he said, anybody on our roster you'd like to do? And we said, we want to do Janet. And he said, you want to do 3 or 4 songs? We said, no, we want to do the whole album. He was like, really? Okay, cool. Because nobody was checking for Janet at that point. But we just felt something. We felt like she had, first of all, just talent. She had a great voice, but she also had a great attitude, and we thought that the attitude was never being brought out of her, and we thought as producers and writers we could do that. So we had a meeting with Janet and her dad and everybody, and they played her like whatever the last record we had done, which I think was Heat of Heat by Patty Austin, which scared her to death because it was a record we did for Quincy Jones, had strings and it was all big and and she was like, I'm not sure that I want my record to sound like this. And we were like, no, it's not going to sound, no, I don't know why they're playing this. This has nothing to do with what we're going to do. And so her dad says, y'all are from Minneapolis. And we said, yeah. Prince is from Minneapolis. I said, yeah. Don't have my daughter sounding like Prince. Okay, Mr. Jackson, you got it. But we got you. So anyway, she came to town. She came to Minneapolis. No bodyguards, no nothing. She brought a friend of hers, Melanie, her friend. We rented her a car to drive, a little Chevy Blazer. She had to find her way around. This was before GPS, so there was maps and all kinds of, Stone Age stuff. And she had to find her way to the studio, find her way to the hotel, and all those kinds of things. And we didn't go in the studio for like the first 4 or 5 days. We just hung out, went to the movies, went to the club, went to the lake and just hung out, right? And about 5 days in, she said, when are we going to actually start working? And we said, oh, we've been working. And we showed her the lyrics to Control. And she started reading the lyrics, and she said, well, wait, this is what we've been talking about. And we said, exactly. And she said, so whatever we talk about, that's what we're going to write about? Like, yeah. And she said, oh, okay. And it was like a light bulb went off in her head because nobody had ever asked her what she wanted to write about or sing about. Or first of all, nobody asked her to write. Nobody asked her what she wanted to sing about. They just gave her songs. And we were like, no, you got to be part of the process here. And that's how the Control record started. And obviously ended up being a very pivotal record in all of our careers. Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning of Control, she talks, it's the first few words of the song. She talks about taking control of her life. I mean, did you guys feel that you were also doing that with your careers by, being handed the reins, taking the reins of a project and seeing it, I guess, from start to finish, more or less, right? The entire album, supervising it, making sure if you weren't writing and producing all the material, it was, up to par. I mean, there was obviously a huge turning point for you guys.
It was a huge turning point, but we had done that because we had been very lucky with Clarence Avant. I remember when we were doing S.O.S Band and we said, hey, Clarence, you should hear these records we're doing. And he says, I don't want to hear it until they're done. So we got really spoiled. There wasn't like an A&R guy always in our midst, trying to tell us what to do. And so when we did the Alexander O'Neal albums and that, it was kind of the same in the Cherrelle album. Nobody really got in our way, and we got a chance to actually do those whole albums and even do the artwork. We did the artwork on the Alexander O'Neal album, the Cherrelle album, and all that. I mean, they just kind of, Christmas album for Alexander O'Neal, they kind of just turned everything over to us and just let us run with it. So we were familiar with doing that. And Janet was interesting because there was no pressure, there was no expectation. The only expectation really was John McClain. John McClain heard the record, and besides saying what every A&R guy says, I need another record, I need another song. But he said the record, he says it's a double platinum record at least. He said at least it's a double platinum record. And anybody in earshot of him, he would tell that to. Like he literally would get on executives' desks at A&M Records and go, this is double platinum. Do you get what this record is? I mean, he totally was a champion for it in a big time way. Yeah.
I mean, what should people know about Janet Jackson as a musician, as an artist, that perhaps they don't know generally?
I just think how good she is. I mean, she is so amazing. First of all, her lineage is crazy, right? I mean, you come out of the Jackson family, and you're growing up with, arguably, the best musical family ever that existed. She got a chance to grow up around that. She got a chance to see the work ethic that they had. To really learn the business, to be an entertainer at an early age. The acting and all the other things she did to me just prepared her to be a better and more expressive songwriter and singer. And, people say that, well, she doesn't have a really good voice, but actually she has a really good voice, but in the sense of, I always compared her to Diana Ross. To me, there were certain singers, as opposed to like Whitney Houston, Whitney Houston was like a singer you listened to, right? Diana Ross was a singer you sang along with, right? She had a knack for melody, and that's what Janet had. If you give her a great melody, to me, she sings it and makes it infectious so that you want to sing along. And I think that is her gift. She's also fearless. You think about the records that we've asked Janet to sing over the years. Think about Nasty and think about the attitude on the song Nasty, which has become ubiquitous again due to the Trump stuff, nasty woman stuff. So, but think about the way she sings that song. Think about a song like If, where she's literally singing. I mean, I remember giving her the melody to If. She said, what should the melody be? And I said, I hear something like almost like an Indian chant, like a Native American, like a and she comes back the next day, sitting over here with the lust in your eyes, saying, don't give a damn. And I'm like going, wow, okay. And then go in and sing it. I said, can you sing that low? She said, yeah, I'll give it a try. She didn't care. And so as writers and producers, you're like, if somebody just is like, I don't care, I trust you. It's like when we stack this harmony, the notes are going to be right next to each other. It's not going to sound right, but it'll be, trust me, it'll sound good when it's done. She said, oh, I trust you. Okay, cool. And then we put the harmonies down and you end up with like Love Will Never Do, the way those harmonies work, or whatever, or Broken Heart Seal, which you played earlier. I mean, to me, she is the inspiration. She is the muse for us. Anybody we work with, it has to be someone who we really want to write songs for, and we really want to try to do our best work. And she, for us, is that person. I think all great producers over the years, certainly George Martin with the Beatles, or Steve Sholes with Elvis Presley, or the gentleman that produced all the Bee Gees records. And there's certain people that you just connect with. And for Janet, she's our muse to me. She's amazing. She's the best. Yeah.
Terry, what about just even on a I mean, Jimmy mentioned the vocals, but I mean, just on a lyric writing and vocal side of it, what stands out to you?
Well, I think when Janet writes, the thing that stands out to me is that it's always heartfelt. It comes right from the heart, and I always say what comes from the heart reaches the heart. Like, she is so in it that it becomes infectious. So I love when we do records together because we just bounce stuff back and forth. And that's always a great foundation for me because I hate to write for anyone in a vacuum. I have to be around them. That's where the inspiration comes from, that energy. And we have such great exchanges, so I really love that part about writing with Janet.
Let's just listen to something from Janet and just enjoy it for a moment. Now, I could have played a lot of different songs from a vast range of years, but I guess I'm just sort of curious to know, when you're in the moment of this kind of success through the 80s and 90s, how does it feel? Like, how does it feel to be on this sort of unprecedented streak of success that doesn't seem to end over even 10 years, but maybe 15 years or whatever, until you're doing it for 3 decades? I mean, when the moment of all of that success, what does that actually feel like? And does it make you nervous? Does it make you feel like you just need to keep going and make sure it doesn't end?
Yeah, well, it feels good, certainly. To have expression in art and for people to like it and receive it well, that's always great. But I think what it did, and I'll speak for myself personally, made me fearless. Like that particular record, I played guitar on that record, and I don't really play guitar. So I always used to tease my friends that are really good guitar players that I'm playing on a #1 record guitar. How many #1s are you on? So, it just makes you fearless. Like, there was no genre or style that we wouldn't try. And that's what I love about music, is that there's so many possibilities. And we've been able to go through different genres and have success. And that's what makes it cool for me. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps my juices flowing. I always want to try something different. And I encourage anyone to always want to try something different. And then, like, we weren't trying to fit into any mold there. It's just a song that we did. And I like that.
It's interesting. So and I'd say our first little role that we went on was kind of through the Control album, and I remember we got the Producer of the Year. We won the Grammy for Producer of the Year. And I remember right after that, Clarence Avant, whose name I'll bring up again because he's so important to us, ordered us to take a 2-week vacation. And we were like, vacation? What are we talking about, Clarence? We got all these acts lined up. We were producing records. He said, you take a vacation for two weeks. You can't go to the studio. That's the stipulation. And we were like, oh, my God. What are you talking about? Okay, fine, right, whatever. So remember the first couple of days, called Terry on the phone. What you doing, man? Nothing, man. What you up to, Jam? Nothing. And we went through that for like the first week. Second week, we kind of settled into it a little bit. We're kind of like, what you up to, man? Nothing, man. That feels good to do nothing, man. Yeah, I agree, man. This does feel good. Yeah, this is cool. Called Clarence up. Clarence, can we take a third week off? He said, absolutely. So we took a third week off. And then we eased back into it, I would say, because Herb Alpert was making an album, and John McClain, who was at A&M, said, would you want to produce Herb Alpert? He said, it's no pressure, just if you'd be interested. And we kind of thought, this is a great project to jump back into because there is no pressure, there's no expectation, except that we want to do good by Herb, because Herb had looked out for us so much on the Janet records and even giving us a chance to even record. So it was like, cool. And we ended up having a #1 record with him, and his first really #1 record in 20 years, you know? And so what it did, I say that to say that that gave us perspective on longevity. And that was kind of our, even going back to, like, I was reading one of our first interviews we ever did, and we said, somebody mentioned saying the hottest producers, and I said, we don't want to be the hottest producers, we want to just be warm for a long time. And so we kind of always set out to do that. And be consistent and have a career. And so that a lot of the decisions we made were all based on having a long career. So that was, because we kind of set that as our goal. The last thing I'll say is on that is that Clarence Avant, the other thing, is we always kept an eye towards doing other things. Because Clarence said, what are you guys going to be doing in 7 years? That was right after the SOS Band. What are you going to be doing in 7 years? And we said, we're going to be making hits. And he said, no, but besides that, what are you going to be doing? It's, you got to get involved in politics. You got to get involved with who's going to be the next me, who's going to be the next Berry Gordy, who's going to be the next people running and labels and signing acts. And you got to start thinking about that. You got to start thinking about other talent that's out there. And, you know, when you see talent that needs help and stuff, you need to make sure you reach out and help them and all of that. And L.A. and Babyface at the time, who were thought of as our rivals, because we both had records out and we both were a production duo, but those guys were actually our friends. And when they needed a boost, they had some bad business dealings, and we introduced L.A. to Clarence, who got their business straight, and they, of course, went on. L.A. now runs Sony, chairman of Sony Music, and Babyface is obviously one of the great writers of all time. So it was those were the other things. So it was, yes, it was nice we were on a nice streak of records, but we also kind of took the time to take time out to do some other things. And I remember the funny thing is always whenever we did get a #1 record, we would, like, literally somebody would go, hey, your record's #1 this week. And we go, yeah, that's great. Cool. What we got up next, Terry? What are we going to do? I mean, we literally just always kept looking forward. It was always whatever the next thing was, because of this, like the song says, what have you done for me lately? That's what it's all about, particularly in the music industry. So yeah, I mean, the whole thing felt great. It's great doing that, but my wheels are always turning. I know Terry's are. Like, we got a project when we get back to Minneapolis. When we get back to LA, we have a project that we're excited about working on. So I think we just always think like that, you know?
And mind you, all the representatives would always tell you you're crazy for wanting to do a Herb Alpert record.
Right. Yeah, right.
Why would you do a Herb Alpert in the middle of doing Janet Jackson?
Right.
Like, because we can. Why not? Right. Why would we do a gospel song or a gospel group for our first signing on our label? Right. Because we can. Right. Why wouldn't we? Right. So I think, you know, you have to keep the inspiration at the level that you need it, not at the level that people want it, that work for you. You have to always be inspired by the music itself. Right. And one thing that we've always done, praise God for that, is keep the music first. It's always about the music. It's not about the money. It's not about the fame. It's not about anything other than the music.
I think we're going to open this up to questions, but I think we should also say thank you one more time to Mr. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. So if you have a question for these gentlemen, please wait for the microphone.
Hello. I think you both maybe missed your calling as voice actors. I've really enjoyed the impressions. I just want to touch on something you said earlier about how when you were starting out, you took on the role of entrepreneurs and you were going around putting flyers on cars and stuff. And whether you had any comment on the fact that because, you know, record labels don't have money to fling around like they used to, a lot of us who are artists, we very much have to take on that kind of role as the entrepreneur. It's not like rock and roll, the whole turning up to a gig smashed and all that, that's dead. And whether you see any similarities between how artists today have to manage themselves and have to really, with like social media and just generally having like a composed, punctual presence. You know, if there's any different, if it's the same, if you have any comments on that.
I think it's very much the same because, once again, you can have talent, but if nobody knows it, then, you know, it's basically, this is the tree that falls in the woods, doesn't make a sound, right? So you have to be able to get out there, and you're using the tools that are available to do it. For us, it was a place called InstyPrints that would print up a bunch of flyers for, 1,000 flyers for $10, and that was the way we communicated and got our message of our band out so people could come and hear us. So to me, social media and getting yourselves out there is part of it. And certainly the record companies these days, you know, the development of groups and of artists used to be in the record companies. I mean, A&R, that's what it's supposed to do. But as Terry calls A&R, ass and rest, because they don't really do a whole lot, and unfortunately, and you have to kind of walk in with a package. Like nowadays, you walk into a label and they want to know how many listeners you have on your channel, or they want to know what sponsors you're bringing with them and with you, and so on and so forth. They really don't want to do any of that work. Once you get it to a certain point, they can help you certainly distribute your record worldwide and give it a budget and all that kind of stuff. But you do have to figure it out on your own. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, for us, if we were starting today, we would be doing exactly the same thing, but we'd be using social media and using the tools that are available to us, because you have to be an entrepreneur nowadays. That is just part of it.
I also really, really like the sort of when you touched on work ethic, because I think that often goes overlooked or maybe not necessarily spoken about. But everyone who's been here for the last 2 weeks, I mean, we're all pretty sleep deprived, so. Thank you very much.
You do it because you love it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd just like to add just a little bit on it. And I think this gets overlooked. I mean, I agree that everything is going full circle. Like, it's just a new paradigm in terms of how we do it. But the thing that we can't lose sight as music people is what our value is. What our value is not only to ourselves, but to the world in our music. Okay, so I'm not giving that shit away. I'm going to make people respect my music as I want them to respect me. So make people respect your music, by you respecting it first. Okay, and how you deal with them is going to reflect in how they deal with you. So make sure, that we get our ducks in a row the correct way and gain the respect back from music, because people are building multi-billion-dollar industries on the backs of our music. Music sells everything but music itself. Now, this is shit I like to talk about. And this is where I get really heated, because music is so important. There's nothing in this world that doesn't use music. So think about how valuable you are.
Hey, thank you both. It's been very exciting. Oh, here, hi. You spoke earlier about the easing into the process of making records. I'm just curious on how long it takes on average to make an album for you guys.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's a good one, because it takes as long as it takes to get it done. And I can give you an example. The three I can give you is that it took, as far as making full albums, because that's different than coming in and doing a couple of cuts here and there, which we've also done a lot of. The Control album took 6 weeks. Janet's Control album. The Rhythm Nation album took 6 months. Okay. The Janet album that followed that took 3 months. Okay. So all wildly different periods of time, but it was enough time to make the record correctly, I guess, would be the thing. So I don't think there's really a...
Got to give him the life one.
Well, oh yeah, well you have your whole life to make your first record. That's the thing. So yeah, so Control took 6 weeks, but actually your life in 6 weeks in the case of working with Janet, because you take everything that you learn and all the knowledge that you learn and all the gifts that you get given, and you put that all into that first recording. And it's a reason a lot of times you hear the term sophomore slump, like when somebody follows up an album and it's never as good as their one before. It's because you have your whole life to make your first one, and then you might have 3 months or 5 months or whatever to make that second one, because now you're touring and you're making videos and you're doing all these other things that are distracting from the thing that made the first one so good. We were fortunate with Janet because Janet took 3 years between and didn't tour on Control. So we actually had time to get in and refurbish and get the batteries recharged and actually come up with different thoughts, because she was a different person at 21 than she was at 18. So that we had that advantage of doing that. So yeah, I mean that it really does. It takes as much time as you want to put into it, I guess. But you should know when it's done. The other thing is you don't want to just continue to go like a dog chasing its tail and not knowing when it's actually done. At a certain point, it's got to come out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi. I'm over here in the back.
Hi.
I had a question about the song Pleasure Principle. I've listened to that song countless amount of times, and I was just thinking about the structure of it. And there's like 2 breaks, like 2 breakdowns in it. And one's like really long. And there's just like 5 different sections or maybe 6 different parts to this song. And this is like a popular song, super popular. What do you have to say about song structure now versus something like that being totally accepted at that time? And I feel like this would just not fly in 2016, like this kind of structure.
Well, I think it all depends on what the song is. Like I remember the song that pops into my mind that was a popular song probably 4 years ago was the Fun song. I can't remember the name of it, but it was this pop record that started off one way and then it went into this whole different thing. And I remember hearing that song, wow, I'm surprised that's getting played on the radio, because it starts off slow and then it gets fast. Some Nights, I think it was called. But anyway, I think that there's a place for, as long as it's the right song, I think it can get played and can get popular. But I think when we were making records back then, we made records longer period. I mean, we made records, Pleasure Principle was probably 5-6 minutes long. I mean, we made it and then we would edit it down. So we would, we'd always keep things long and put, grooves in it and that kind of stuff. A lot of the records nowadays are made off a loop. So you have a loop, and what happens is the beginning of the song sounds exactly like the end. I can hear a record now for 30 seconds or a minute and know that basically that's the whole song. And there's people that break the rules on that. Obviously, Kanye, to me, with his last album, did a lot of that, where it's like the end of the song has nothing to do with the beginning of the song. Drake does the same thing. The way 40 produces is they'll get to a certain point, and 40 will go to a whole different thing in the middle of the song, that to me is always really interesting. So I think it's possible to do it, but I know what you mean about Pleasure Principle. And actually, I'll shout out to Monty Moyer, because Monty Moyer was actually the writer of that song. So it was from the keyboard player in the time. So, I mean, it's kind of cool that all the guys in the time on their own have all had hit records, which is kind of cool, because Jelly Bean Johnson did Black Cat, for Janet. And Monty did that, and he also did If You Were Here Tonight for Alexander O'Neal, and so on and so forth. So it's been kind of cool that everybody has had. Of course, Jesse Johnson had a great solo career too. So everybody outside of the time, it kind of was like, back in the day we used to call the time like Saturday Night Live. You know how people always leave Saturday Night Live and then they go on and do other things? The time was kind of like that, you know? It was just a lot of talent in that group.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. Try it. Yeah. It's just, it's like anything else. It's like a bottle of milk. Milk can be sour. It can be spoiled. It can be good. It can be cold. It's what you put in it. Put some chocolate in it and let it go.
Do you think it ever has to do with the industry and how they control what goes on the radio?
Well, if that's the case, then everything would still be the same record since the beginning of time. Because once again, it's us. It's the people in this room that are creators, that are important. Like that one record that was big 10 years ago was big because of its time and who it appealed to at the time. But if it was going to be that way, we all can do records based on know-how. Yeah, you do 8 bars of this and 4 bars of that and another 8 bars of this. That's doing it on know-how. But inspiration tells you to do something different. You got to let inspiration take you where it takes you. And don't be afraid of that. Otherwise, we're done. There's no more records to be done after today. You understand? So let it go. It's
I'm
okay.
not afraid of it. I just know no one's going to hear it.
Well, but if you say that, you speak it into existence.
Exactly.
And if
You're
you
already
never
defeating
create it, they will never hear it.
That's right.
So that's on you.
Yeah, okay.
So, for me, I'm never afraid. I mean, the stupidest record is usually the one. We never thought that, when we did Fake, we never thought Fake was going to be a record. We was like, oh, yeah, we're going to do, if you were here tonight, we're going to do all the ballads or whatever. When Clarence Avon said, man, I like that. What that motherfucker Fade? Yeah. Fade? No, Fake, Clarence. Fake. Clarence liked Fake because it inspired him a different way. We loved it, but we didn't think anybody else was going to get it. So you just got to do it. You got to make it. You know, that Field of Dreams thing, build it and they will come. I believe that. I hope you do.
I do. Thank you.
What's up? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your immeasurable contribution to music. When I was a kid, the only song that my dad turned the stereo up all the way for was Escapade. If you can imagine a 6-year-old Scottish man dancing around to Escapade, that is very much why I'm here today and feel very honored to be here in the room with you guys. Can you share? To me, that is the most sonically perfect song ever. Every pair of speakers every clock radio in my household that was the test. Did Escapade sound good on it? My old man maintains it's the greatest intro of a song ever. Now I produce records, mix records. Can you speak on a very technically / nerdy level about what makes that record sound so amazing and why it's the greatest intro ever written?
Okay, well, I'll try. So Escapade. So the idea of Escapade was that Janet wanted a song that you would hear like at a basketball game or a sporting event, like a really up-tempo record that everybody would want to sing along with. So that was the kind of the seed of the idea. Technically, I used, for the track, it was a SP-1200 drum machine, and it was just a stock sound that came with the machine. We actually had never used the SP-1200, but we had broken out. We had it, but we hadn't used it, and we used it for Miss You Much, the same drums as Miss You Much, and the same drums as Love Will Never Do. So Escapade was the other song that we used these drums on. It's just a real simple beat, obviously. Now, going back to the Prince story about playing with my left and my right hand, I got really good at playing with both hands, playing a bass part with my left hand while doing chords with my right hand. Escapade was a song where the bass line was, I believe, a DX7, if I'm not mistaken, and the upper hand was playing the dun dun, which was a Mirage midied with something, another string keyboard, but I couldn't tell you what it was. I don't really remember. So the record was basically done with me playing dum 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 ga ga gung 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 like that with the drum beat, and that was it. Now, the intention was to always go back and redo it. But with Janet, the thing we always did was we always would let her sing, and then we'd fill the track in around her vocal because we always wanted her vocal to be as important as everything else. So rather than finish the track and have her sing it, we'd always get it to a point where we'd say, is it good enough to sing? And she'd say yes. Then we'd put her vocal on it. We never went back and changed that track.
I think he tried, but it didn't feel the same.
It didn't. Yeah, it wasn't the same thing. And so the story on it is that it's probably the least tracks we've ever used on a record, certainly on a Janet record. It literally is a bass line, a keyboard line that was probably stereo and MIDI'd. So it was probably 5. The drums were all on one track. I think we might have put one overdub of something on there. I can't even really remember now. And that was it. And I remember back in that day when you made a tape, it was on analog tape, and you'd send it out to get a remix or something done. And what you'd do is you'd make a copy of the tape called a work tape, and you'd send that out. And so they'd always want the master because they'd want to be able to adjust the levels and stuff. And I remember we sent it out, and we just made a copy of the actual master because that was all we had. And I remember we sent it to, I think it was probably Shep Pettibone, who was one of the top remixers at the time. And Shep said, hey, where's the rest of the tracks? And we said, that's it. It's those tracks. And he said, but the drums are all on one track. Yep. He said, well, the keyboards just is on one track. Yes. He said, no, there's got to be other tracks. I said, no, that's it. That's how it was. The day we cut it is the day that it ended up on the record like that. So obviously we had clock radios in mind when we were making it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Can I have one quick, tiny little other thing? And
Yeah.
I'd only mention it because you guys brought up the system, and this has driven me crazy for a few years. But Thelma Houston Used to Hold Me So Tight, which came out in 1983, came out at the same year as the system Losing You, which in the pre-chorus has there's a vocal overdub that's you used to hold me so tight. And I can't figure out which one came out first. And I wanted to know, are you guys referencing the system or is the system referencing you guys?
That's a great question. What was the name of the system song?
I've Never Losing You, or I Can't Stop Losing
Yeah.
You, or...
Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna say probably I'm gonna say the system probably. I'm gonna say the system probably because they were very influential on what we did. The difference was obviously that I played it, and like the thing on Used to Hold Me So Tight that was cool to me anyway was that the bass line we played, and we played it all the way through. But the little part that goes on top of it, that dun, 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 was a piano, and we just damped the threw a blanket on the strings, and that's what made that little dun, 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 dun. But I played them. It wasn't MIDI'd or anything. It was just I played freehand on that and stuff. So it was cool. It was a lot of fun. Thelma Houston was the bomb. What a
I
great
love
singer
that song.
she was.
That's like one of anytime I DJ, I always play that song. I
cool.
love it.
Thank
I love
you.
that song.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Your records are the soundtrack to a lot of great memories of my youth until today. And I wanted to know, a lot of artists, especially young artists, don't have the benefit of a producer or somebody who can listen to their songs from afar and kind of help shape them. And I wanted to see if you guys could discuss how you listen to records, especially demos from somebody's album that you're about to work on, or a newer, younger artist who doesn't already have as much of a vision in place, and discuss how you listen to records and maybe some tips for artists how to listen to their own records and make them a little bit more precise is the wrong word, but a little bit more dynamic or interesting or directed.
Yeah, see, that's a real big question. For me, I listen to music based on how it makes me feel. Like, I don't know any other way to do it. You know, one thing that we've done since the new technology came out is kind of we look at things more than we actually hear things. I call it listening with our eyes. The waveform looks wrong, so we think something's wrong with it. I remember, like, back in the day, I would, because I'm not a keyboard player, but I would play stuff on the keyboard, and Jimmy would say, "That's not right. That chord's not right." And I say, "Sounds right to me." And that's the only way I can think. If it sounds right, then it's right, because it made me feel okay. And so I would go with it that way. And as far as producers, I mean, I think everybody at some point in time needs someone. I call it the barber effect. The barber can make your hair look wonderful. He can cut the front of his head, but he can't cut the back. Everybody needs a barber. Everybody needs to have that person that looks at you objectively from the other side and is able to give you that criticism. That can be a friend. You know, that can be anyone. One of the best objective moments for me, I remember we did a Janet song, I think, one time. And I played it for my sister because I'm thinking it's the jam, it's jamming. And she listens to it and she comes out, you know, and her sensibility is different. She said, it's all right. I like it. And anybody gives you that tone, you know they don't like it. Yeah, okay. I said, well, what's wrong with it? I don't know. It's too many voices. I said, what do you mean too many voices? That's just the background. Oh, I don't know. It's too many voices. So I had to make myself shut up and try to put myself in her place and listen from a simple point of view. And I finally understood it. It was just the background was muted too many times. It wasn't personal anymore. It was like a choir singing. And that pushed it into a big mush. And she needed to feel what was there. So I finally said to myself, man, a baby can teach you something. Because you just don't know it. You just don't know it all. Even as much as you know in your infinite wisdom, there's somebody that's going to give you something simple that'll take you to a different place. So I make sure when I look at my kids, if it makes them move a certain way, the groove's not right, I can just see it now. So, you know, try to get with people that you know. I mean, within this room, I mean, you have so many different people that can help you with your music. You know other people that can help you with your music. You know, we bounce stuff off each other all the time. We don't have to be in the same room all the time working. I'll play it for him, and he'll give me all kinds of ideas. I'll hear something that he's doing. I'll give him ideas. But that's where it's that inspiration, man. Keep that inspiration alive. You know, that gives the song a chance. And then next. It's always about the next one. Keep it moving. You know, you can invest a lot of time in something and get no return. So we call it polishing a turd. Every song that we do is not going to be great. So you got to move on. And then who knows, like the remnants from all those turds can actually be a beautiful song somewhere. You know, yeah, that's fertilizer.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for driving a lot of points home today. And seeing that this is the last lecture here in Canada, you produced one of the most heartfelt and beautiful tributes to one of Canada's finest. Who made Q-Tip say, Joni Mitchell Never Lies? What is the story behind the song? And can we have that as an outro later?
Yeah. Okay. So "Got Till It's Gone" was, first of all, it was a call to Joni, because growing up, I always loved Big Yellow Taxi. I used to skate to it at the skating rink, so I always loved that record. And being a sample person as I am, I always thought that would be a great song to put a sample, you know, put the sample into. So we called her, and she said, but Janet and I both called her, and we just said, hey, we have an idea that uses one of your songs, but we don't know how you feel about sampling. And she said, I can't wait to hear it. She said, have fun. I can't wait to hear it. And we were like, okay, great. So the idea for the track was, we knew Q-Tip was going to be on the song because Janet had wanted Q-Tip to do something on the record. She was a huge Tribe fan, and she was just like, we got to get Q-Tip to do something. So in my mind, I'm thinking, sonically, let's give Q-Tip the best sonic comfort zone we could. So there's a producer, Jay Dilla, who is one of my all-time favorite, rest in peace, producers ever. Jay Dilla had done a remix for a brand new Heavy song called Sometimes, but he had done a remix to it that was just, it was just his quintessential kind of stop-start, just the kind of, it was so funky. And I was like, we got to do something like that. So we had a drum programmer named Alex Richburg, and Alex Richburg was, he kept trying to make me, because I never liked sequencing stuff. I just wanted to just play it. Just put a beat on it and I'll play. He set my whole studio up, put an MPC in there, hooked it up to this Sonic keyboard I had called a MR76, and he said, make a record over the weekend just using this stuff. Do not hook up to the way you normally do it. You got to use the drum machine. You got to hook all this stuff together. And I'm like going, oh, okay, fine. So on a Sunday, I went in and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. So I'm thinking I got to do it as simple as possible because I don't really know how to work this stuff, right? So I did the little keyboard part, blum, 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 and I looped it. So it's like, okay, that's easy. Now I got to do a bass line, and I'm going to do the bass line drunk like Dilla would do a bass line. So the bass line was da-doom, 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 ka-doom, doom, da-doom, da-doom, da-doom. But I played it real drunk. Doom, 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 ka-boom, boom, da-doom, doom, 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 like real drunk, right? So the last thing was the beat. So the beat was real simple in my mind because it was just right? Problem is, I didn't know how to get the MPC to swing. So it was just kind of going boo, boo-ka, boo-ka, boo, boo, boo-ka. And I was like going, no, this ain't right. And I got frustrated and I gave up and I said, okay, that's it, I'm done. So the next day, Monday, I come into the studio. Alex comes in the studio. He said, what did you do over the weekend? I said, I came up with a track, but I can't get the drum machine to swing. And he puts it up and he listens and he goes, oh, you just got to do this. And he hits like 2 buttons and now I'm there. So now we got it. So the Joni Mitchell sample, I took and I put it in what's called an AMS. And it was this little sampler thing. It only had like 6 seconds of sampling. But all I needed was, and that's all I really needed. So I put the sample in there, and I basically just triggered it. I just, every time the beat would come around, I would just go, and then I started going, and started doing stuff like that. So then I wanted it to sound authentic hip hop. But I don't really know. I could DJ, but I wasn't that good of a scratcher. So I had the same MR76. I put little scratches and stuff. So it would go. So I tried to make it as authentic as possible. We went to New York, Hit Factory in New York. We played it for Q-Tip. And he was like, yeah, I get it. And he goes in and does his part and just like nails it. Like it took him, I don't know, 3 takes maybe. He had it. He just had the whole song down. And then the toughest part of that song for us was we had a whole different lyric and a whole different melody that Janet sang that didn't work. It just kind of dragged the song down. And one day we just were messing with different melodies and she came up with the, she came up with that little line and he was like, okay, now let's put that against everything we got. And that ended up being kind of the record. We played it for Joni. Joni loved it. She loved it. And we were like so happy because we were thinking while we did all this work, we hope she likes it. And it was amazing to me because it was like I say, it was so, the making of the record was so inspirational to me because once again, it was one of those records, like I think I mentioned with That's the Way Love Goes, because we love hip hop so much that I wanted something that felt authentic, even though, like I say, I'm not of hip hop, but I wanted something that felt that way. And Q-Tip gave it the credibility. And it was interesting because it was a huge record on the urban side, and pop radio didn't touch it, which was a first for a Janet record in a while. But pop radio just was like, we'll wait for the next one. And so it was really interesting. But no, it's one of our favorites that we ever did. And it actually turned out, once again, when you hear something in your head, I had no idea what it was going to turn out like because of, my, obviously not being that technical on the MPC and all that stuff. But it actually turned out great. And people to this day will ask me, who did the scratches on there? And I'm like, oh, they're not real scratches. They're just I just kind of faked them. But if I fooled you, that's great, because that's what I was trying to fool you and make you think that a DJ was in there cutting it up. And the Joni Mitchell Never Lies, that was just something that Q-Tip said. He was just ad-libbing, and he just kind of said that, and we were like, we're putting that in like every time. Like we took that and we said, we're going to put that in every time she says, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So that's the story.
You mentioned the Lindrum earlier, and I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the Lindrum in general, and why you got so much of it, got so much out of it back then, and maybe even today if you're still using it.
The Lindrum was, first of all, it was the staple of a lot of Prince records. The LM1, the original Lindrum was. And we loved it. We thought it was so cool. When we started producing, we had really we got the LM2, and then we had the DMX, and those were like the two kind of go-to drum machines for us. The thing that was cool about the Lindrum was when they started making the sound chips where you could switch out the sounds. And I remember we had, because it had all the classic Linn sounds, but then they started making other sounds that you could get. And I remember we had these little adapters that fit in that you could pop, because they were tough to get out, the little chips with the sounds. But they made a little adapter where you could put these adapters in, and then you just kind of flip a little switch and it would just pop out. So we had a ton of those. So the Control album is almost all Lindrum. I mean, we triggered some other drums, but like if you listen to like even the song Control and the big breaks on that, and that's the 808 toms, but sampled into a Lindrum. So the Lindrum became sort of the basis for all that stuff. Nasty was the same way. The kind of noisy beginning, that's all Lindrum. But it was just taking the sounds that were there and tuning them way different than they're supposed to be. Like, something that was supposed to have a sound like, tss, tss, tss. If you tuned it down, all of a sudden it was like, So we like doing those kinds of different things. And it was a real simple drum machine to program. And also, in those days, the machines all had individual outs. So you would take the bass drum, the snare drum, the hi-hat, the whatever, and you'd plug different chords into each one, and they would all come up on different tracks. So you could always manipulate and do, mixing on the tracks and stuff, because it didn't all come out at the same time. It was all on different tracks, which was pretty cool back in that day. So, but the Lindrum was awesome. I mean, we love it. We still have it. It's still awesome. We still use it to this day.
How many drummers in the room? Lindrum put the drummers out of business. And it's, it's funny but true, because I remember when the drum machines first came about, drummers would all just trash drum machines. Oh, I hate drum machines. And as a bass player, I must say I hate to play to a drum machine because it doesn't move like a human. And, you can't make the turnarounds cough and push and pull like you can with a real drummer. So it was a terrible time for drummers, because the drummers that didn't accept the drum machine actually were out of work for probably about 10, 15 years. The ones that embraced it, they continued to work because they became great drum machine programmers, because nobody can program a drum machine like a drummer, because they understand. So another thing to say, technically, you have to embrace technology. You have to, because whatever it gives you, you have to be able to apply it to what you do.
By the way, I know you like playing to a real drummer. However, I must say that Encore by Cheryl Lynn is the funkiest ass bass. Because I programmed the drums on, and then he put the bass on that record. That record, come on, man. I'm sorry, Terry Lewis, you got to give it up on that one, man.
But I gotta make it cough though.
No, that record coughs though. I know what you're saying, but that record coughs. That bass coughs on that.
Man, I play like I play.
Yeah, man. That record coughs, man. That encore, man. Come on now. That's the one there.
On that note, there's that song you mentioned earlier where it actually says "Yo Terry," but I'm not sure whether you're on the record. But who did the hi-hats on 777 9311, and what drum machine was that?
Aha. So that was a LM1. That was the Lynn LM1. And when the LM1 initially came out, there were drum beats that were put in by drummers. They actually had drummers put in beats. The 777 9311 beat was put in by a drummer named David Garibaldi, who's a drummer for Tower of Power. And if you ever have the opportunity or pleasure of hearing Morris Day play the drums, Morris Day plays exactly like David Garibaldi. That David Garibaldi was Morris Day's hero, playing the drums. And that's how that ended up becoming the beat of 777.
We could be here for days.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I just said we could be here for days.
Oh, sorry.
Do we have stories?
Yeah, sorry. We're just scratching the surface.
Thank you to Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.